My family and I were dining at an upscale restaurant when my husband, Eric, decided to take charge of the reservation I had made for my dad's birthday. To my surprise, he brought along his own parents and then made a comment that stung. A single father like yours doesn't belong in fancy restaurants. He should stick to cheap pubs. Although I was upset, I chose to respond calmly. You do realize this restaurant is owned by my brother, right? I said. I'm Elizabeth, a 27-year-old office worker. My parents divorced when I was young, and my dad raised me on his own. They split because my dad was always working, and it took a toll on my mom. Even though Dad still loved her and didn't want the divorce, he eventually agreed when she said, "I'm tired of waiting, set me free." After the divorce, I stayed with Dad for financial reasons. He would always tell me, "It's not your mom's fault. It's mine for relying on her too much and neglecting her. I regret making her feel lonely." Whenever I asked why Mom left, he would just sigh sadly. Despite everything, Dad always put me first. He attended all my school events and never missed a birthday or Christmas. Some people make hurtful remarks about us being a single-parent household, but Dad's love made those comments easy to ignore. After the divorce, I occasionally saw my mom, but our relationship grew distant, especially after she remarried and had another child. Once I started working, Dad retired early to enjoy a quieter life. He had worked so hard to support me, and I wanted him to finally focus on his own interests. Although I live on my own now, I visit Dad frequently. 2 years ago, I married Eric, who had been introduced to me by a friend. Eric is hardworking and honest, and my dad quickly grew fond of him. His parents were also welcoming and accepted me immediately. However, the idea of moving into Eric's family home caused me significant distress, especially considering both my parents. My parents are getting older, and I constantly worry about them. They're both retired now and have become increasingly isolated, rarely going out or interacting with others. Moving in together seemed like a good opportunity for everyone, and Eric pleaded with me to consider it. "Please, think about it," he said earnestly. Of course, I wanted to respond to his heartfelt request, but moving into his parents' house would put a considerable distance between me and my dad, making it difficult to check on him as often as I used to. Although Dad is in good health, I feared that if something happened, he might not be found in time. I was torn about what to do, but eventually, Dad offered his advice. "I'm healthy enough to live on my own. I don't want to be a burden to you. You should take care of Eric's family. Just call me if anything happens," he emphasized. Reluctantly, I agreed to move in with Eric's parents, but just a few weeks after the move, I began to regret my decision. The people I thought were kind and welcoming began to show their true colors. Eric and his parents started treating me like a servant, leaving all the household chores, cooking, laundry, and cleaning solely to me while they did nothing. When I asked Eric for help, he brushed me off. "I'm tired from work too. Housework is a wife's job, right?" he retorted. My protests that I also worked fell on deaf ears. "It's different. You married me, so you should be devoted to me and my parents," he would say dismissively. Coming home exhausted from work, only to face an endless list of chores, was overwhelming. But it wasn't just the chores. Eric's mother, Mary, made my life a living hell. She would deliberately spill food to dirty the floor or complain about the smallest speck of dust. "This spot is dirty, clean it," she would order, leaving dirty clothes everywhere for me to pick up. After I had washed and carefully folded them, she'd say, "These folds will crease the clothes, do it again," and then kick them apart. Mary often made cruel remarks about my upbringing, sneering, "You can't even do housework properly because you weren't raised in a proper family. How pitiful. It's amazing you can't hold a job. The company must be blind to hire someone like you. It's your dad's fault for the way he brought you up." I was against marrying someone from such a family, but Eric insisted. I deeply disapprove. "You should be more devoted to us and Eric. If we hadn't welcomed you as a wife, you'd be living a sad, lonely life with your dad." Hearing such insults about my dad made my blood boil, but I had to suppress the urge to lash out at Mary. The worst part was Dad John, my father-in-law. and Eric did nothing to intervene. Instead of supporting me, John would look at me with disdain. And Eric would even join Mary in mocking me. "Mom's right, you lack any gratitude toward us," he would say, echoing her sentiments. "Why is she so cold to you?" Eric sneered. "A woman from a dysfunctional family like yours would have been left on the shelf if I hadn't married you. You hardly have any qualities beyond working and doing housework, so at least do those well. Don't even think about asking to share the chores. That's your role as a wife. Making excuses like being tired from work is completely unacceptable. I won't tolerate it," Eric dictated. Whenever I tried to argue or refuse, Eric's mood would shift dramatically, treating me as if I didn't exist. "How dare you, as a wife, make a fool of me," he would shout. Mary, his mother, would chime in. "Don't stress Eric out when he's tired, only making things worse for me." Some of the furniture in my in-laws' house had been bought with my money, and not by choice. They had abruptly taken me to an electronics store, pressuring me to buy things. I capitulated under the public pressure, not wanting to cause a scene. But the harassment didn't stop there. When I tried to visit my family for Christmas, they obstructed me at every turn. "You're our wife now. Focus on our preparations. We have a feast to prepare and thorough cleaning to do. Your dads all alone won't be doing much, right? We have other relatives to entertain." They insisted. When I persisted in wanting to go home, they responded childishly, spilling juice on my packed clothes and hiding my shoes. Facing daily complaints and harassment, I reluctantly gave up the idea of going back home. Unable to reveal the truth, I told Dad, "The in-laws' house is busy with Christmas preparations, so I'll stay and help. I'm sorry I can't make it back." Dad didn't blame me. "It can be helped," he said gracefully. "Don't worry about it, it's busier there with more people. I can't manage fine alone here," he comforted me. Eric's ongoing tyranny made me seriously consider divorce, but I was troubled about how to break the news to Dad, who was always so understanding and kind. Determined to celebrate my father's 60th birthday without causing him any pain, I secretly made a reservation at a renowned fancy restaurant. Knowing Eric and his parents might object, I simply told them I needed to return home briefly. They grumbled but accepted my excuse when I promised it would be just for the day. Dad was overjoyed when he learned about the restaurant reservation. "I'm so blessed to have such a wonderful daughter. Thank you so much," he said, and hearing his gratitude filled me with immense happiness. However, I never anticipated what would happen next. As we arrived at the restaurant and informed the staff about our reservation, we were met with a shocking revelation. There was already a reservation for 2 under my name, but 3 people were already seated. Confused, I went to check the reserved table and was stunned to find Eric and his parents sitting there. Eric looked up with a smug smile and sneered. "Too bad you can't outsmart us and dine fancy just by yourselves." The in-laws didn't even acknowledge us, engrossed in the feast they had presumably ordered for themselves. Dad, seeing Eric and the in-laws at the table, looked back and forth between us, clearly puzzled. He had only ever seen the pleasant side of Eric and his parents, so his confusion was understandable. Eric, suspecting something was up due to my cheerful demeanor about returning home, had secretly snooped through my phone. He discovered the reservation and preemptively ordered dishes for himself and his family to undermine our plans. With a triumphant expression, Eric began to mock us, people from poor, single-parent households like you don't belong in fancy restaurants. Know your place and be grateful we're allowing you this much. You should go to some cheap pub instead, he said loudly, drawing annoyed glances from other customers, oblivious to the discomfort he was causing. He remained smugly self-satisfied. Dad, seated next to me, was dumbfounded by Eric's audacity. I was at my wit's end. I knew Eric and his family were selfish, but I never imagined they would stoop to such shameless levels. My anger reached its peak, threatening to ruin this special 60th celebration. Suppressing my urge to shout, I calmly addressed Eric as he sat there smirking. "This is my brother's restaurant," I said firmly. "He invited us here to celebrate Dad's birthday." At my words, Eric and the in-laws, who had been disinterestedly eating, Frumsy, my brother, who had been listening to the conversation from the back of the restaurant, appeared with a deeply displeased expression. Although he had been taken by Mom during the divorce, unlike our estranged mother, he has always maintained and cherished his relationship with Dad and me. My brother owns the restaurant and had suggested celebrating Dad's 60th birthday here. He hadn't attended the wedding due to work commitments, but he had seen the photos and recognized Eric. Initially, he thought Eric and the in-laws at the reserved table were there to join the celebration with Dad, but seeing Eric mocking both me and Dad, and the in-laws not correcting him, my brother was furious. "How dare you speak to my sister and Dad like that?" he said, his anger palpable. "I regret allowing you to be a part of this celebration. Just because you're Emily's family, is this how you always treat her?" my brother demanded, his anger evident. "I prepared this celebration for my sister's wish to honor Dad, not for people who hijack it to frill a meal. We'll celebrate Dad and my sister's occasion on another day. You'll be paying for what you ate," he declared firmly. Eric and his party began making excuses. "No, that's not it. We were really meant to celebrate," they protested, but my brother left them to the staff and came outside to join Dad and me. "I'm sorry for letting such people into the restaurant and ruining the celebration," he apologized as we headed home. I explained to Dad all the mistreatment from Eric and his family. After listening quietly, Dad said, "If you're unhappy in your marriage, there's no point in staying. Don't worry about me. Come back home." So, instead of returning to the in-laws' house, I went straight to my own home. Shortly after, my brother called to inform me that Eric and his family had caused a scene over the bill but had reluctantly paid when threatened with police involvement. Minutes later, Eric called, furious. "Where are you? You've embarrassed us. Send the money we paid," he yelled. "I will pay a penny of it," I retorted. "I'm done with you, and we will be divorcing. I've gathered evidence of the bullying, so be prepared." I had been collecting evidence of the harassment from Eric and his family, which they never suspected. According to a lawyer I consulted, the forced purchases and other financial exploitations were enough to prove psychological abuse. Realizing I was serious about the divorce, Eric panicked. "No one but me would marry a woman from a single-parent household. Do you want to upset Dad?" he threatened. I scoffed. "Dad said my happiness matters most. I'd rather be with him than deal with the likes of you," Eric warned. "You regret this. Think it over." But I hung up and proceeded with the divorce preparations. Eventually, Eric and I divorced. He was reluctant due to concerns about societal image but eventually gave in. As the court date approached, I had gathered substantial evidence of psychological abuse, which ensured I received a fair settlement in the divorce. During the property distribution, I took steps to protect my assets and secure my future. I reclaimed the furniture I had purchased for the in-laws' house, exercising my legal right as the buyer. The in-laws tried to complain, but my lawyer simply pointed out that a purchaser naturally retains the right of possession, leaving them defeated. A few months after moving back to my parents' home, Eric reached out, seeking reconciliation. He explained that on the day of the incident at the restaurant, his boss and colleagues had been there for a work celebration. They overheard everything he said to me and Dad. His boss, who had grown up in a single-parent household, was deeply disappointed in Eric's disparaging remarks. As a result, Eric's promising career was jeopardized. He lost his standing and any chance of advancement, and his colleagues regarded him with contempt as a psychological abuser. Eric's troubles didn't end at work. The in-laws' household had become chaotic. Before the divorce, Eric and the in-laws had offloaded all household chores onto me. After the divorce, they were now bickering over who should do the chores, with Eric being pressured to buy new furniture to replace what I had taken and contribute more financially. Eric pleaded, "I was wrong. Elizabeth, I took advantage of your kindness too much. I've truly reflected and want to start over." But my feelings had cooled significantly. It seemed likely that Eric was facing increased pressure to manage household chores at the in-laws' place and was trying to offload some of their financial demands onto me. I firmly rejected his proposal. No way. I wouldn't get back with you even if you paid me. I can't see you changing back and exploiting me again once we're married. I was foolish not to divorce you sooner. Maybe Dad's 60th wouldn't have been ruined. We're divorced now. If you contact me again, I'll consult my lawyer, I said, then hung up the phone. The mention of a lawyer seemed to resonate, as I received no further attempts at reconciliation from Eric. And now, I'm happily living at home with Dad, and my brother occasionally visits, bringing gifts. His wife is pregnant, and he seems truly happy. Dad and I are both excited about the baby, while I'm not considering marriage anytime soon. If the opportunity arises, I'll be sure to choose more wisely.
I was rummaging through the attic, dust motes swirling in the sunbeams slicing through the small window. It was one of those lazy Sunday afternoons when I had nothing better to do. My name is Harper, and I never expected to find something that would turn my world upside down. But there it was, tucked inside an old cigar box beneath a pile of yellowing newspapers. A letter, aged and fragile, with my grandfather's handwriting on the front. I sat back on my heels, curiosity piqued. Grandpa had always been a bit of a mystery, a gentle soul with a twinkle in his eye. But he never talked much about his time at the helm of the family business. I unfolded the letter carefully, the paper crackling in protest. As I read, my heart began to race, a mix of disbelief and dread settling in my stomach. The letter hinted at something dark, something unethical happening within Callahan Pharmaceuticals. My grandfather had known, and he had tried to stop it, or at least, that's what the letter suggested. It was cryptic, as if he feared someone might find it. But the implications were clear enough to me. I sat there, the attic growing dimmer as the sun dipped lower in the sky, my mind racing. This could change everything. My father, Everett, had always been so proud of the company, his legacy. But what if that legacy was built on lies? I felt torn, my loyalty to my family clashing with the sense of justice that had driven me my whole life. I knew I had to do something, but what? I stood up, brushing the dust from my jeans, the letter clutched in my hand like a lifeline. My heart pounded as I made my way downstairs, each step heavy with the weight of what I had discovered. Dinner that night was a quiet affair, the clinking of cutlery and soft murmur of conversation filling the dining room. My mother, Lorraine, was in her element, talking about the latest charity gala she was organizing. My father sat at the head of the table, nodding along but clearly more interested in his phone. My brother Nolan was absent, as usual, off on some archaeological dig halfway across the world. I waited until there was a lull in the conversation before speaking up. I found something interesting in the attic today, I said, trying to keep my voice casual. Oh. My mother looked up, her interest piqued. What did you find, dear? Just some old letters from Grandpa, I replied, watching my father's reaction out of the corner of my eye. He paused, his fork halfway to his mouth, but said nothing. How lovely, my mother said with a dismissive smile, already turning her attention back to her salad. I pressed on, my heart pounding. Actually, one of them mentioned something about the company. Some kind of issue he was concerned about. My father finally looked up, his expression unreadable. Old news, Harper. Your grandfather worried about everything. He was a good man, but he saw problems where there weren't any. There was something in his tone that made me uneasy, a flicker of something I couldn't quite place. I nodded, not wanting to push too hard. Not yet. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and I could tell it was going to grow. After dinner, I retreated to my room, the letter spread out on my bed. I needed to know more. I needed to understand what my grandfather had been trying to say. I pulled out my laptop, determined to dig deeper into the company's history, to find out if there was any truth to his concerns. As I started my research, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was on the brink of something much bigger than I had anticipated. My thoughts kept drifting back to my father, his dismissive tone, and the way he had avoided meeting my eyes. Was it possible he knew more than he was letting on? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I couldn't let this go. I had to know the truth, even if it meant uncovering something that could tear my family apart. I glanced at the clock, realizing it was already past midnight. I closed my laptop, exhaustion pulling at me, but my mind was still racing. As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't help but wonder what other secrets were hidden within the walls of my family's empire. And more importantly, what would I do when I finally uncovered them? The next morning, I found myself back in the dining room, staring at the remnants of breakfast. The tension from the previous night still lingered in the air, like a storm cloud refusing to move on. I could feel it in the way my father avoided eye contact, the way my mother busied herself with her phone, and the empty chair that usually belonged to Nolan. I decided to take the plunge. "Dad," I started, trying to sound as casual as possible, "about that letter from Grandpa. I was thinking maybe there's more to it." He looked up from his newspaper, his expression carefully neutral. "Harper, it's not something you need to worry about. The company is in good hands." "Is it though?" I pressed, feeling a spark of defiance. "I mean, if Grandpa was worried, maybe we should be too." My mother's voice cut through, smooth and dismissive. "Darling, your grandfather was a wonderful man, but he often saw shadows where there were none. We should focus on the present." I nodded, but my mind was already racing. I needed to talk to Nolan. He had always been the one to question things, to dig deeper. Maybe he knew something. Later that day, I called him, the phone pressed tightly to my ear as I paced my room. His voice crackled through the line, distant but familiar. "Hey, Harper. What's up?" "I found something," I said, diving straight in. "A letter from Grandpa. It mentioned some issues with the company." There was a pause, a breath of hesitation. "Harper, I know about it." His admission hung in the air between us, heavy and unexpected. "You knew?" I asked, my voice a mix of surprise and hurt. "Why didn't you say anything?" "It's complicated," Nolan replied, his tone weary. "You know how Dad is. And Clayton. He's been involved too." "Clayton. Of course." Our cousin had always been ambitious, always vying for a bigger piece of the family pie. "What do you mean?" "Look, I can't get into it over the phone. But there's more going on than you realize. Be careful, okay?" I hung up, feeling more confused than ever. If Nolan was worried, then this was bigger than I thought. I needed to find out what Clayton was up to, how he fit into all of this. That evening, I cornered Clayton at a family gathering. He was standing by the bar, a drink in hand, charming as ever. "Harper," he greeted me with a wide smile. "Long time no see." "Yeah, it's been a while," I replied, trying to keep things light. "I wanted to ask you about the company. I've heard some things." His smile faltered, just for a moment. "Oh? What have you heard?" "Just some rumors," I said, watching him closely. "About some questionable practices." "You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" Clayton chuckled, but there was an edge to it. "You know how people talk. Always looking for something scandalous." I nodded, pretending to accept his answer, but I could see the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. He was hiding something, and I was determined to find out what. As the evening wore on, I kept an eye on Clayton. He was schmoozing with some of the board members, his charm on full display. But there was something else, a tension in his shoulders, a quick glance over his shoulder every now and then. He was nervous, and that only fueled my resolve. Back at home, I sat on my bed, the weight of the day pressing down on me. My family was hiding something, and I was caught in the middle of it. I thought about my patients, the people who trusted me to help them navigate their own challenges. How could I stand by and do nothing when my own family might be hurting others? I knew what I had to do. I needed to dig deeper to find the truth, no matter the cost. As I lay down, the room darkening around me, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing on the edge of a precipice, about to leap into the unknown. The next morning, I woke with a new determination. I needed to talk to Elias to get his perspective. He had always been my rock, my sounding board. As I dialed his number, I couldn't help but wonder what he would think of all this. Would he stand by me, or would this be the thing that finally drove us apart? As the phone rang, my heart beat in time with it, each ring a reminder that I was on a path I couldn't turn back from. After my conversation with Elias, I felt a renewed sense of determination. He had listened patiently, his calm, steady presence grounding me as I poured out my fears and suspicions. His encouragement to confront my father had given me the push I needed. I knew it was time to face the truth, no matter how painful. I spent the next morning combing through the financial records I'd managed to dig up. The numbers were dizzying, a tangled web of transactions that seemed to hint at something more sinister beneath the surface. I took a deep breath, knowing I had to confront my father with what I'd found. That evening, I found him in his study, the room dimly lit by the glow of his desk lamp. He looked up as I entered, his expression unreadable. "Harper," he greeted me, his voice a mix of curiosity and caution. "Dad, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the nerves twisting in my stomach. I laid the records on his desk, the paper rustling ominously in the quiet room. "I found these. They don't look right." He glanced at the papers, his expression shifting from surprise to something harder, more guarded. "Where did you get these?" he asked, his tone sharp. "Does it matter?" I shot back, feeling a surge of defiance. "What matters is what they show. There's something wrong, and you know it." He leaned back in his chair, a heavy sigh escaping him. For a moment, I saw a flicker of vulnerability, a crack in the facade. "Harper, you don't understand. This is business. Sometimes you have to make tough decisions." "Tough decisions?" I echoed, incredulous. "Grandpa wanted to stop this. He knew it was wrong." "Your grandfather was an idealist," my father replied, his voice tinged with frustration. "He didn't understand the pressures of running a company like this." I shook my head, disbelief coursing through me. "You can't justify this, Dad. It's not right." He stood up, his posture commanding. "This is my legacy, Harper. I built this company from the ground up. I won't let you ruin it with your naive ideals." I felt a flash of anger, the heat rising in my cheeks. Naive? Or honest? "I can't just stand by and watch you destroy everything Grandpa stood for." He looked at me, a mix of anger and disappointment in his eyes. "You need to decide where your loyalties lie, Harper." I turned and walked out, my heart pounding in my chest. I felt like I was being torn in two, my love for my family clashing with my need to do what was right. As I left the house, I realized I needed to clear my head to think about what to do next. I found myself wandering through the park, the crisp evening air cooling my heated skin. The conversation with my father replayed in my mind, each word a painful reminder of the rift between us. I felt a hand on my shoulder and turned to see Elias, his presence a balm to my frayed nerves. "Hey," he said softly, his eyes full of understanding. "Hey," I replied, grateful for his support. I confronted him. It didn't go well. He nodded, a look of sympathy on his face. "I figured it wouldn't. But you did the right thing, Harper." "I don't know what to do now," I admitted, feeling the weight of my choices pressing down on me. "Whatever you decide, I'm here," he said, his voice steady. "You have to follow your heart, even if it's hard." We walked in silence for a while, the path winding through the trees. I knew I had a decision to make, one that could change everything. As we walked, Elias's phone buzzed with a message. He glanced at it, his expression shifting to one of surprise. "What is it?" I asked, curious. "It's from Nolan," Elias replied, handing me the phone. "He says he has something important to tell you." A new wave of uncertainty washed over me. What could Nolan know that was so urgent? I felt a flicker of hope, a sense that maybe, just maybe, there was a way to untangle this mess. As we made our way back, my mind was racing with possibilities. I knew I was on the brink of something big, a revelation that could change everything. But what would it mean for my family, for the legacy my father was so desperate to protect? The path ahead was uncertain, but I felt a spark of determination reignite within me. Whatever Nolan had to say, I was ready to face it head-on, armed with the truth and the support of those I loved. The following day, I met Nolan at a small cafe, the kind of place where the hum of conversation and clatter of dishes provided a comforting backdrop to difficult talks. He was already seated at a corner table, his expression a mix of apprehension and determination. As I approached, he stood to greet me, pulling me into a quick hug. "Thanks for coming," he said, his voice low. "I know things have been complicated." "That's one way to put it," I replied, taking a seat across from him. "So, what is it you needed to tell me?" He hesitated, glancing around as if to ensure we weren't overheard. "I've been looking into the company, Harper. There's more going on than just financial discrepancies." The weight of his words settled over me like a heavy fog. "What do you mean?" Nolan leaned forward, his eyes serious. Clayton's been manipulating the numbers. He's involved in some kind of insider trading scheme. I think he's planning to take control of the company. I felt a chill run down my spine. Are you sure? I've seen the evidence, he said, sliding a folder across the table. It's all there. I didn't want to believe it either, but Clayton's been playing everyone. He's using the company's resources for his own gain. I opened the folder, the documents inside confirming Nolan's claims. My mind raced, the implications spinning out in all directions. If this was true, it could destroy everything my father had built. And Clayton. I should have known he was up to something. What do we do? I asked, feeling the enormity of the situation pressing down on me. Nolan sighed, running a hand through his hair. We have to confront him, but we need to be careful. Clayton's not going to go down without a fight. I nodded, the resolve hardening within me. This was bigger than just our family. It was about justice, about stopping Clayton before he could do more damage. But I knew we had to tread carefully. Back at home, I found myself pacing the living room, the folder clutched in my hands. I needed to talk to Elias to figure out our next steps. As if on cue, he walked in, his expression shifting to concern as he saw my face. Harper, what's wrong? He asked, coming to stand beside me. It's Clayton, I began, handing him the folder. He's been manipulating the company. Nolan found proof. Elias scanned the documents, his brow furrowing. This is serious. If we expose this, it could ruin him. Exactly, I said, feeling the weight of the decision before us. But if we don't, who knows what he'll do next? Elias nodded, his gaze steady. We have to do what's right, Harper, even if it's hard. I took a deep breath, grateful for his unwavering support. I know, but this could tear my family apart. We'll face it together, he assured me, his hand warm on my shoulder. That evening, I called a family meeting, my heart pounding as I waited for everyone to gather. My father was first to arrive, his expression wary. My mother followed, her usual poise tinged with curiosity. Nolan was last, his presence a silent show of support. Once we were all seated, I took a deep breath, the words heavy on my tongue. I have something to tell you. It's about Clayton. My father's gaze sharpened, his posture tense. What about him? I slid the folder across the table, watching as he opened it, his expression shifting from confusion to anger. These are serious accusations, Harper. They're not accusations, I replied, my voice steady. They're facts. Clayton's been using the company for his own gain. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Everett, is this true? He looked up, his face a mask of disbelief. I don't know. But if it is, we can't let it continue. The room was silent, the weight of the revelation settling over us like a thick fog. My father looked at me, his eyes filled with a mix of anger and betrayal. What do you want to do? I met his gaze, feeling the strength of my convictions. We need to confront Clayton. We can't let him destroy everything Grandpa worked for. There was a pause, the tension in the room palpable. Then slowly, my father nodded, a reluctant acceptance in his eyes. You're right. We need to stop him. As the meeting ended, I felt a sense of resolution, a new determination to see this through. But I knew the hardest part was yet to come. Confronting Clayton would be a battle, one that could change everything. But with Elias and Nolan by my side, I felt ready to face whatever came next. The next morning, I woke with a sense of dread curling in my stomach. Today was the day we would confront Clayton. I could feel the tension in the air as I got ready, each movement heavy with anticipation. Elias was already up, his calm presence a reassuring anchor in the storm of my thoughts. Are you ready for this? He asked, handing me a cup of coffee. As ready as I'll ever be, I replied, trying to muster a smile. We need to stop him before things get worse. We met Nolan outside the office building, the morning sun casting long shadows on the pavement. He looked as tense as I felt, but there was a determination in his eyes that mirrored my own. Together, we walked through the glass doors, the sound of our footsteps echoing in the lobby. Clayton was in his office, a sleek, modern space that seemed to reflect his ambition. He looked up as we entered, surprise flickering across his face before he masked it with a smile. Harper, Nolan, what brings you here? I took a deep breath, stepping forward. We know what you've been doing, Clayton. The insider trading, the manipulation. It's over. He leaned back in his chair, the smile never leaving his face. I have no idea what you're talking about. Nolan placed the folder on Clayton's desk, the document spilling out like a damning cascade. It's all there. You can't deny it. Clayton's eyes flicked over the papers, his expression darkening. You think you can just walk in here and accuse me of this? You're playing a dangerous game. I'm not the one playing games, I shot back, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. This isn't about us. It's about doing what's right. He stood, his demeanor shifting from casual to threatening in an instant. You have no idea what you're getting into. This company is mine, and I won't let anyone take it from me. The room was thick with tension, the air crackling with unspoken threats. I could feel my heart pounding, my resolve hardening with each beat. We're not backing down, Clayton. Not this time. For a moment, I thought he might lash out, but then he laughed, a cold, humorless sound. You think you're so righteous, Harper. But you're just like the rest of us, clinging to a legacy that doesn't belong to you. His words hit me like a blow, the truth of them stinging more than I cared to admit. But I couldn't let him see that. I couldn't let him win. This isn't about the legacy. It's about justice. Nolan stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. We're giving you a chance to step down quietly. If you don't, we'll have to take this public. Clayton's eyes narrowed, the mask slipping to reveal the anger beneath. You think you're the heroes in this story? You're just pawns in a game you don't understand. I met his gaze, refusing to back down. Maybe. But at least we're trying to change the rules. The silence that followed was heavy, the weight of our confrontation hanging in the air like a storm cloud. Finally, Clayton nodded, a reluctant acceptance in his eyes. Fine. You want to fight? You've got one. As we left his office, I felt a mix of relief and apprehension. We had taken the first step, but I knew the battle was far from over. Clayton wouldn't go down without a fight, and the stakes were higher than ever. Back at home, I found myself pacing the living room, my mind racing with possibilities. I knew we had done the right thing, but the fear of what might come next gnawed at me. Elias watched me, his calm presence a balm to my frayed nerves. You okay? He asked, his voice gentle. I don't know, I admitted, stopping to face him. I thought I knew what I was doing, but now, everything feels so uncertain. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. It's okay to be scared, Harper. But you're not alone in this. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I just hope we're doing the right thing. We are, he assured me, taking my hand. And whatever happens, we'll face it together. As the day wore on, I felt a new determination settling over me. This was about more than just my family. It was about standing up for what was right, even when it was hard. I knew the road ahead would be tough, but with Elias and Nolan by my side, I felt ready to face whatever came next. The family gathering was supposed to be a celebration, a momentary pause in the storm that had engulfed us. But as I stood among the familiar faces, the weight of what I had to do pressed down on me like a physical force. The room buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses, but all I could hear was the pounding of my own heart. I spotted my father across the room, his presence a commanding force as he held court among a circle of board members. My mother was nearby, her laughter ringing out like a melody in the chaos. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. Elias squeezed my hand, his silent support grounding me. I nodded, a wordless exchange that conveyed everything I couldn't say aloud. It was time. I approached my father, each step feeling like a mile. He looked up as I neared, his smile faltering as he read the determination in my eyes. Harper, he greeted me, his tone cautious. Enjoying the party? We need to talk, I said, keeping my voice low. He nodded, excusing himself from the group and leading me to a quieter corner. What's this about? I took a deep breath, the words heavy on my tongue. It's about Clayton. We confronted him. His expression darkened, a mix of anger and disbelief. You did what? He's been using the company for his own gain, Dad. We have proof, I said, my voice steady despite the fear knotting in my stomach. He shook his head, a bitter laugh escaping him. You're making a mistake, Harper. You don't understand what you're doing. I understand enough, I replied, feeling the heat of my convictions. This isn't about us. It's about what's right. He leaned in, his voice low and dangerous. And you think you're the one to decide that? You're just a child playing at being a hero. His words stung, but I refused to back down. I'm trying to fix what's broken, Dad. This company isn't what it used to be. He straightened, a cold fury in his eyes. You're just like your grandfather, always seeing problems where there are none. Maybe he was right. I shot back, the words spilling out before I could stop them. Maybe you're the one who's blind. The silence that followed was deafening, the tension between us a living thing. I could see the hurt in his eyes, a vulnerability I hadn't expected. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by a steely resolve. You're making a choice, Harper, he said, his voice cold. And you'll have to live with the consequences. I felt a chill run through me, the finality of his words sinking in. I know, but I can't stand by and do nothing. He turned away, dismissing me with a wave of his hand. Then you're no daughter of mine. The words hit me like a physical blow, the air rushing from my lungs. I stood there, frozen, as he walked away, his back a wall I couldn't breach. I felt Elias's presence beside me, his arms slipping around my shoulders, pulling me back into the present. Harper, he murmured, his voice a lifeline. We'll get through this. I nodded, the motion automatic. But inside I felt hollow, like a part of me had been carved out and discarded. My father's words echoed in my mind, a reminder of the cost of my choices. As the evening wore on, I found myself retreating to the edges of the gathering, the noise and laughter a distant hum. I felt adrift, the ground beneath me shifting with each passing moment. Nolan found me there, his expression a mirror of my own turmoil. I'm sorry, Harper, he said, his voice thick with regret. I didn't think it would come to this. It's not your fault, I replied, though the words felt empty. We did what we had to do. He nodded, a silent agreement that did little to ease the ache in my chest. We'll figure it out. Together. As the night drew to a close, I felt a new determination settle over me. I had lost my father's support, but I still had Elias and Nolan, and I still had the truth. It would have to be enough. But as we left the party, a new complication arose. A call from the office, urgent and insistent, pulling me back into the fray. Clayton had made his move, a last-ditch effort to seize control and silence us once and for all. The stakes had never been higher, and the path ahead was fraught with danger. But I knew I had to see this through, to fight for what was right, no matter the cost. The news from the office hit like a punch to the gut. Clayton had called an emergency board meeting, a last-ditch effort to consolidate his power and silence us for good. I felt the urgency in every fiber of my being as we rushed to the company headquarters, Elias and Nolan at my side, a united front against the storm. The boardroom was already buzzing with tension when we arrived, the air thick with anticipation and unspoken alliances. Clayton stood at the head of the table, exuding confidence, his eyes gleaming with the arrogance of someone who believed victory was within reach. Harper, he said, his voice smooth and condescending. I was wondering when you'd show up. I met his gaze, refusing to be intimidated. This ends today, Clayton. He laughed, a sharp, mocking sound. You think you can just waltz in here and take what's mine? You're delusional. The board members shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting between us, sensing the battle lines being drawn. I felt the weight of their scrutiny, but I couldn't back down now. We have evidence, I said, my voice steady. Evidence of your insider trading, your manipulation of the company's finances. It's over. Clayton's smile faltered, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face before he masked it with bravado. You're bluffing. You have nothing. Nolan stepped forward, placing a thick file on the table. We have everything. And if you don't step down, we'll take it public. The room fell silent, the tension so thick it was almost suffocating. Clayton's eyes narrowed, a dangerous glint in them. You think you're the saviors of this company? You're just trying to destroy everything we've built. We're trying to save it, I countered, feeling the truth of my words resonate within me. This isn't about revenge, Clayton. It's about justice. He sneered, his composure slipping. Justice? You think you're some kind of hero? You're just a spoiled brat trying to play with the big boys. The words stung, but I held my ground, drawing strength from Elias and Nolan beside me. I'm not playing, Clayton. This is real. And it's time you faced the consequences. The board members exchanged glances, the tide of opinion shifting as they weighed the evidence before them. I could see the doubt creeping into their eyes, the realization that Clayton's reign might be over. But then, in a move I hadn't anticipated, Clayton pulled out a document of his own, slamming it onto the table with a triumphant grin. You think you've won? Think again. This is a contract, signed by your father, giving me control of the majority shares. My heart sank, the revelation hitting like a cold wave. I glanced at Nolan, his expression mirroring my shock. This was the twist we hadn't foreseen. The final card up Clayton's sleeve. The room erupted into chaos, voices overlapping as the board members reacted to Clayton's revelation. I felt the ground slipping away, the certainty I'd clung to crumbling beneath me. But just as despair threatened to take hold, Elias stepped forward, his voice cutting through the noise. That contract is void. All eyes turned to him, the room falling silent once more. Clayton's smirk faltered, confusion flashing across his face. What are you talking about? Elias held up another document, his expression calm and resolute. This is a legal opinion, confirming that the contract is invalid due to conflict of interest and lack of disclosure. Clayton's face paled, the confidence draining from him as he realized his trump card had been played and lost. I felt a surge of hope, the tide turning once more in our favor. The board members murmured among themselves, the balance of power shifting as they reconsidered their loyalties. Clayton's grip on the company was slipping, and he knew it. You haven't won, he spat, desperation lacing his words. This isn't over. I met his gaze, feeling the strength of my convictions. It is over, Clayton. It's time for you to step down. The room held its breath, the weight of the moment pressing down on us all. Clayton's shoulders sagged, the fight leaving him as he realized the inevitability of his defeat. As he turned and left the room, the tension began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of relief and vindication. We had faced the storm and emerged victorious, the truth prevailing against the odds. In that moment, I felt the themes of justice and integrity come full circle, the lessons of my journey crystallizing into a new understanding. This wasn't just about revenge or family. It was about doing what was right, no matter the cost. And as I stood there, surrounded by those who had stood by me, I knew we had done just that. In the weeks following the showdown at the boardroom, life began to settle into a new rhythm. Clayton's departure had left a void in the company, but it also opened up opportunities for change and healing. The board had appointed a new interim CEO, someone with integrity who was committed to rebuilding trust and transparency. Elias and I threw ourselves into the startup, channeling our energy into creating something meaningful and innovative. It was exhilarating to see our ideas take shape, to build a company grounded in the values we both held dear. Our partnership, both personal and professional, felt stronger than ever. One afternoon, I found myself back at my grandfather's house, sorting through the last of his belongings. The attic was warm with the afternoon sun, and I felt a sense of peace as I sifted through the memories. As I opened an old trunk, I discovered a stack of letters tied with a faded ribbon, each one addressed to me. Curious, I sat down and began to read. The letters were filled with my grandfather's musings, his hopes for the family, and his deep love for us all. One line stood out to me: Harper, always remember that true strength lies in kindness and the courage to stand for what is right. The words resonated deeply, a reminder of the journey I had taken and the lessons I had learned. I felt a renewed sense of purpose, a commitment to honor his legacy in my own way. Later that day, Elias and I met Nolan for coffee. The cafe was bustling, the air filled with the aroma of fresh pastries and the hum of conversation. Nolan looked more at ease than I had seen him in a long time, the weight of secrecy lifted from his shoulders. I've been thinking, Nolan said, stirring his coffee thoughtfully. Maybe it's time I came back for a while. Help out with the company, see if I can make a difference. I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. I think that's a great idea. You've always had a way of seeing things others miss. He nodded, a hint of a smile playing at his lips. And maybe I can finally figure out what I want. Outside of Dad's shadow, Elias raised his cup in a toast. To new beginnings. We clinked our cups together, the sound a small celebration of hope and renewal. As we left the cafe, my phone buzzed with a message from my mother. It was a simple note asking if we could meet. I hesitated, the old wounds still tender, but Elias squeezed my hand, offering silent encouragement. When I arrived at the park where we had agreed to meet, Lorraine was already there, looking elegant and composed. As I approached, she turned, a soft smile on her face. "Harper," she said, her voice gentle. "Thank you for coming." "Of course," I replied, unsure of what to expect. She gestured to a bench, and we sat down, the silence between us comfortable yet charged with unspoken words. Finally, she spoke, her voice tinged with regret. "I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened, about the choices we've made." I nodded, letting her continue. "I want you to know that I'm proud of you," she said, her eyes meeting mine, "for standing up for what you believe in. It's not easy, but you did it." The words were a balm to my soul, a healing I hadn't realized I needed. "Thank you, Mom. That means a lot." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of past conflicts slowly lifting. It wasn't a complete reconciliation, but it was a start, a chance for healing and understanding. As I walked back home, I felt a sense of closure, a peace that had eluded me for so long. The journey had been difficult, filled with challenges and heartbreak, but it had also been transformative. I had found my voice, my strength, and a path that was uniquely mine. The future was uncertain, but I knew I was ready to face it, armed with the lessons of the past and the support of those I loved. And as I looked ahead, I realized that true success wasn't about wealth or power, but about integrity, love, and the courage to do what is right. In that moment, I understood that my grandfather's legacy lived on, not just in the company, but in the values he had instilled in me. And I was determined to carry them forward, building a future that honored the past while embracing the possibilities of tomorrow. I never expected to discover my husband's betrayal during what should have been a normal Sunday brunch. But there I was, frozen in my own hallway, listening to him plot with his parents about how to get his hands on my family's money. My name is Sloan, and until that moment, I thought I had a pretty good handle on my life. I'm a music teacher, married to Reed, who I thought was the love of my life, and mother to our amazing 3-year-old daughter, Lila. My parents built a comfortable life for themselves through hard work, and I've always been proud to follow their example of independence. "She just needs the right push," Reed was saying in our living room, his voice carrying that smooth, confident tone he usually reserved for his sales pitches. "If we can convince her to quit teaching, she'll have to rely more on her parents' support." I pressed myself against the wall, my heart pounding. Lila was upstairs taking her nap, and I'd just come back from checking on her when I heard them talking. "Darling, you're being too subtle," my mother-in-law Camille's voice dripped with honey-coated venom. "That salon chain her mother runs is worth millions. Sloan needs to understand that her little music teaching career is, well, beneath her potential." Beneath her potential? I mouthed silently, my hands clenching into fists. "It's not that simple," Reed sighed. "Sloan's stubborn about her independence. She gets that from her father." "Well, her father's not getting any younger," Grant, my father-in-law, chimed in. "And neither is her mother. Have you looked into their estate planning?" I felt sick. The conversation continued, but their voices became muffled by the blood rushing in my ears. 3 years of marriage, and I'd never heard Reed talk about me like this. Like I was some puzzle to be solved, a resource to be mined. The worst part? They were discussing my parents' money as if they were already dead. My mom, who still works 60-hour weeks at her salons because she loves what she does. My dad, who still tinkers with new tech innovations in his home office, more alive than ever in his retirement. I must have made some sound because the conversation in the living room suddenly stopped. Taking a deep breath, I straightened my shoulders and walked in, plastering on my best teacher smile, the one I use when catching students passing notes in class. "Hey everyone," I said, proud of how steady my voice sounded. "Having a nice chat?" Reed's face flickered with something. Guilt? Concern? Before settling into his usual charming smile. "Hey, babe. We were just talking about your career." "Oh." I picked up my coffee mug from the side table, needing something to do with my hands. "Anything interesting?" Camille jumped in, all perfectly manicured nails and practice concern. Darling, we were just discussing how you could have so many more opportunities if you weren't tied down to teaching. With your family's resources. My family's resources, I interrupted, taking a slow sip of my now cold coffee, are exactly that. My family's. The room went quiet. Reed shifted in his seat, that familiar crease appearing between his eyebrows, the one that shows up when a sale isn't going his way. Sloan, he started, but I cut him off with a look. I think I need some air, I said, setting down my mug with a careful precision that belied the trembling in my hands. Would you all mind watching Lila for a bit? I just need to clear my head. As I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. I looked exactly the same as I had this morning, but everything felt different. The woman staring back at me had just discovered that her marriage might be built on a foundation of lies. And she was already planning what to do about it. The week after I overheard Reed's conversation with his parents, I found myself sitting at my parents' dining table, watching my mother arrange flowers like nothing was wrong with the world. I hadn't told them about what I discovered yet. How do you tell your parents that their son-in-law sees them as a walking investment portfolio? You're quieter than usual, Mom said, trimming a stem with practiced precision. Is everything okay with Lila? Lila's perfect, I replied, managing a small smile. She's with Reed at his parents' house. Mom's hands stilled for a moment.
Ah.
Camille and Grant's. The way she said their names told me everything I needed to know about her opinion of my in-laws. I should have paid more attention to her instincts 3 years ago. They're hosting a dinner tonight, I continued, tracing the wood grain of the table with my finger, to discuss a new business venture. Dad looked up from his tablet, his engineer's mind already clicking into gear. What kind of venture? I don't know yet, but they specifically requested that you and Mom come too. Did they now? Mom's voice had that edge to it, the same one she used when dealing with difficult suppliers for her salon chain. How interesting. The doorbell rang before I could respond. My stomach dropped when I saw Reed through the window, arriving early with his parents in tow. Lila wasn't with them. Where's Lila? I asked as soon as they entered. The nanny's watching her, Reed answered smoothly, kissing my cheek. We thought it would be better to discuss business, without distractions. I caught the look that passed between my parents. They'd always supported my decision to keep teaching after Lila was born, unlike Camille, who called it playing at having a career. Dinner was a masterclass in passive-aggressive warfare. Camille praised Mom's cooking while simultaneously suggesting she must be too busy with her little salons to cook often. Grant kept steering the conversation toward retirement planning, while Reed maintained his salesman's smile, watching everyone like he was waiting for the perfect moment to close a deal. So, Reed finally said, setting down his wine glass. We wanted to discuss an exciting opportunity. Here it comes, I thought. There's this amazing property development project, he continued. Premium location, guaranteed returns. But we need initial investors. My father's expression didn't change, but I saw his hand tighten around his fork. And you're bringing this to us because? Because family should help family, Camille jumped in. And with your resources, it would be such a shame not to. Our resources, my mother interrupted, are already allocated to expanding the salon chain. We're opening 3 new locations next month. I watched Reed's face fall slightly before he recovered. But surely some diversification would be wise? Marlo, your business is successful, but property development could provide much better returns. Better returns than the business I built from nothing? Mom's voice could have frozen hell. The business that put Sloan through college debt-free? That's not what Reed meant, Camille said quickly. We just think. I know exactly what you think. I cut in, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. You think my parents' money is your safety net. You think my mother's business is just a stepping stone to something better. You think I should quit my job and let my husband handle the finances. The room went dead silent. Reed stared at me, his charm cracking to reveal something darker underneath. Have you been eavesdropping on private conversations? Private conversations about my family's money? I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. Yes, I heard everything last Sunday. And I've been watching you ever since, waiting to see if you'd come clean. Instead, you brought your parents here to help you pitch this scheme." "Sloan," Reed started, but my father cut him off. "I think it's time for you all to leave," Dad said quietly. His calm tone carried more weight than any shout. As they left, Reed lingered in the doorway. "We'll talk about this at home." "No," I replied. "We won't, because I'm staying here tonight with my daughter. You can't just watch me." After they left, I sat between my parents on the couch, feeling like a kid again. Except this time, the monster wasn't under my bed. It was wearing my wedding ring. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. Mom squeezed my hand. "Don't be sorry. Be smart." And in that moment, I knew exactly what I needed to do next. I never meant to become a detective in my own marriage, but there I was at midnight, scrolling through Reed's laptop while he slept upstairs. The house was silent except for the hum of the heating system and my racing heart. What started as a gut feeling led me to his email. The password was still Lila's birthday, something that should have been sweet but now felt like another manipulation. My hands trembled as I clicked through folder after folder, each one revealing another piece of the puzzle I wished I'd never started solving. "Oh God," I whispered, staring at a bank statement. The numbers didn't lie. Reed had been hemorrhaging money for months. Failed investments, hidden credit cards, loans I never knew about. But what made my stomach turn was an email thread with his parents about accessing Marlowe's business accounts. The floor creaked behind me. "Find what you're looking for?" I spun around to find Reed standing in the doorway, his face half hidden in shadow. He didn't look angry. Worse, he looked calculating. "How long have you been planning to steal from my mother's business?" My voice was steady, despite the tremor in my hands. Steal is such an ugly word. He stepped into the room, running a hand through his sleep-messed hair. "I prefer to think of it as redistributing family resources." "Family resources?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You mean the business my mother built from nothing? The one she worked 18-hour days for? The one that could save us?" He slammed his hand on the desk, making me jump. "Do you know what it's like, living in the shadow of your family's success? Having everyone compare me to your father? So, this is about your ego? This is about survival." He leaned closer, his charm completely gone now. "I'm drowning here, Sloan. The property development deal fell through. I owe people money." "How much?" "More than you want to know." I stood up slowly, putting distance between us. "And you thought the solution was to steal from my mother?" "I thought the solution was to use available resources to..." "Stop." I held up my hand. "Just stop with the sales pitch. For once in your life, be honest." Something shifted in his expression, a crack in the facade.
"Fine.
"You want honest? I'm broke. Everything I built is gone. And your parents? They're sitting on a fortune while watching me fail. They worked for that fortune. And I worked too." His voice rose, making me glance nervously at the ceiling, thinking of Lila. "But nothing I do is ever enough. Not for them. Not for my parents. Not for you. Don't you dare make this about me," I hissed. "I loved you. I supported you. I never once asked about money." "Exactly." He laughed bitterly. "You never had to ask about money. You've always had it as a safety net. Must be nice." I opened my email and started forwarding myself copies of everything I'd found. Reed watched me, his jaw tightening. "What are you doing?" "Protecting my family." I met his eyes. "You have 12 hours to tell my parents everything or I will. And believe me, you'd rather it come from you. You're bluffing." "Try me." I grabbed my phone and headed for the stairs. "I'm getting Lila." He caught my arm. "It's the middle of the night. Let go of me." My voice was ice. "Or the first call I make won't be to my parents. It'll be to the police." His hand dropped. As I packed a bag for Lila, I could hear him pacing downstairs, making phone calls in hushed, angry tones. I knew he was calling his parents, probably trying to damage control. Let them try. 20 minutes later, I was buckling a sleepy Lila into her car seat. Reed stood in the doorway, watching us. "This isn't over," he said. "You're right," I replied, starting the car. It's just beginning. As I drove through the dark streets toward my parents' house, Lila dozed in the back seat. I caught glimpses of her in the rearview mirror, so innocent, so unaware of how her world was about to change. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my resolve strengthening. Reed was right about one thing. This wasn't over. But he had no idea what was coming next. They say bad news comes in threes. I just never expected all three to hit within 24 hours. The first came at dawn, when my lawyer called to tell me Reed had already withdrawn half our savings. Legal, since both our names were on the account, but devastating nonetheless. I sat in my parents' guest room, watching Lila sleep while my hands shook around my phone. The second blow landed at noon. Mom collapsed at one of her salons. Stroke, the doctor said in the sterile hospital hallway. She's stable, but the next 48 hours are critical. I stood there, numb, as Dad gripped my hand. The fluorescent lights made everything look harsh and unreal, like a bad dream I couldn't wake up from. The third hit just before midnight. A text from an unknown number. Thought you should see this. Attached was a photo of Reed leaving a hotel with Camille, carrying documents. The timestamp showed it was taken just hours after I'd left with Lila. I was still staring at my phone when Dad came back from the coffee machine. The vultures are already circling, he said quietly, handing me a cup. Reed's been calling the salon managers, trying to get financial information. How did you? Maria called. She's worked with your mother for 15 years. She knows something's wrong. He sat heavily in the plastic chair beside me. They all do. A nurse walked past, her shoes squeaking on the linoleum. Through the window of Mom's room, I could see her lying there, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. The woman who taught me to stand on my own 2 feet couldn't even breathe without machines. Dad, I started, but my voice cracked. I know. He pulled out his tablet, pulling up documents I recognized from Mom's office. Your mother and we've been expecting something like this. Not this exactly, but what do you mean? We've seen the way Reed and his parents look at what we've built, like it's their backup plan. His fingers moved across the screen, entering passwords. Your mother made some changes last month. Transferred majority control of the salons to you. The coffee cup nearly slipped from my hand. She what? She said she had a feeling. He smiled sadly. She always did have good instincts about people. A commotion at the nurse's station made us both look up. Reed was there, arguing with security, Camille hovering behind him with her perfect makeup and predatory eyes. Sir, only family is allowed, the guard was saying. I am family, Reed's voice carried down the hall. That's my mother-in-law in there. I stood up, my body moving before my brain could catch up. Dad grabbed my arm. Let security handle it.
No.
I handed him my coffee. I need to end this now. Reed saw me coming and switched on his concerned husband act. Sloan, baby, I've been so worried. Save it. I stopped just out of reach. I saw the hotel photos. His face flickered with surprise before settling into righteous indignation. You're having me followed? Apparently someone else is. I glanced at Camille, who had the decency to look uncomfortable. What documents were you reviewing with your mother at the Grand Hotel? That's private business. Nothing about my family's business is private to you anymore. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. You have exactly one chance to walk away with your dignity intact. Leave now, or I release everything I found on your laptop to every investor you've ever worked with. Camille grabbed his arm. Reed, let's go. But he shook her off, his mask finally cracking. You think you can threaten me? I know things too. Things about your father's tech patents, about what? Dad's voice came from behind me, steady and cold. Please, enlighten us about my business, Reed. I'm very interested in hearing what you think you know. The security guard stepped closer. Sir, I need you to leave. For a moment, I thought Reed might actually try to fight. But then his shoulders slumped, and I saw him clearly for the first time, a scared little boy playing at being a businessman, drowning in his own lies. This isn't over, he said, but the threat sounded hollow. Actually, it is. I turned back toward Mom's room. My lawyer will contact you tomorrow. As they were escorted out, I heard Camille hissing at Reed, but I didn't bother listening. I had more important things to focus on, like protecting what my mother had built, like being the daughter she always believed I could be, like making sure the people who tried to destroy my family never got another chance. The salon mirrors reflected my mother's empty office chair as I sorted through the mess Reed had left behind. 3 days after her stroke, and I was already finding holes in the business accounts, small at first, then larger, like a trail of breadcrumbs leading to something worse. MS. Sloan, Maria, our head stylist, appeared in the doorway. They're here again. I didn't need to ask who they were. Through the glass walls, I could see Camille and Grant in the waiting area, dressed like they were heading to a board meeting instead of a beauty salon. Send them in. I kept my eyes on the computer screen, making them wait as I finished reviewing another suspicious transaction. Sloan, darling. Camille's perfume arrived before she did. We've been trying to reach you. I've been busy discovering what your son did to my mother's business. I finally looked up. Would you like to explain these transfer authorizations with your signature on them? Grant shifted uncomfortably. Now, Sloan, business is complicated. Theft usually is. I turned the screen toward them. Did you think no one would notice? That my mother would just write it off as a family favor? Your mother understood the importance of family, Camille said, her voice sharp. Unlike you, apparently. I laughed, the sound hollow even to my own ears. Family? Is that what you call embezzlement these days? We prefer to think of it as a temporary reallocation. Grant pulled out a folder. Actually, we have a proposal that could solve everyone's problems. The only problem I have is sitting in front of me. Camille leaned forward, her designer bracelet catching the light. Your mother's in the hospital, Sloan. The business needs strong leadership. Reed has experience. Reed has experience stealing from it. I stood up, my chair rolling back. And now I know you helped him. Be reasonable, Grant pleaded. We can make this go away. Sign over controlling interest to Reed, and we'll forget about pressing charges for the irregularities we found in your father's tech patents. My blood ran cold. What irregularities? Camille smiled, all teeth and triumph. Let's just say Reed did his homework. It would be a shame if the patent office received an anonymous tip about your father's early development processes. The pieces clicked together. Reed's late nights researching, his sudden interest in Dad's old projects. They'd been planning this for months. Get out. My voice was steady, despite the rage building in my chest. Think about Lila, Camille pressed. About her future. About what a messy legal battle would do to her. Something in me snapped. I picked up my mother's heavy glass paperweight, turning it over in my hands. You know what my mother told me about building this business? She said sometimes you have to be willing to break things to build them stronger. I brought the paperweight down on the corner of her desk, cracking the glass surface. They both jumped. That was your first warning. I set the paperweight down carefully. Here's your second. I have copies of everything. Every transfer, every forged signature, every reallocation. One phone call, and it all goes to the FBI. You wouldn't, Grant stammered. Think about Reed. I am thinking about Reed. I'm thinking about how good he'll look in orange. I walked to the door, holding it open. You have 24 hours to return every penny, or I start making calls. And if you ever mention my daughter again, I'll make sure the only way you see her is through prison visiting room glass. After they scurried out, Maria appeared with a cup of tea. Your mother would be proud, she said quietly. I looked at the cracked desk, thinking of Mom lying in that hospital bed, of Dad poring over his old patents, of Lila asking why she couldn't go home. No, I replied, picking up my phone. Not yet, but she will be. I dialed my lawyer's number, watching Camille and Grant hurry to their car through the salon windows. They thought they could use my family against me? Fine. Time to show them exactly what kind of woman my mother raised. Time to make them regret ever hearing the name Sloan. The divorce papers sat untouched on Reed's desk while he paced his office like a caged animal. I'd chosen this moment carefully, after hours, when his staff had gone home. But before he could escape to whatever hotel he was hiding in these days. You can't be serious. He picked up the papers, then dropped them like they burned. After everything we've built. You mean after everything you've stolen? I stayed standing, keeping the desk between us. The salon accounts, my father's patents, our savings? I was trying to save us. He slammed his hands on the desk. Your parents have been holding us back, controlling everything with their money. The only one trying to control anything is you. I pushed the papers toward him. Sign them. He laughed, a harsh sound that made me flinch. Or what? You'll tell Daddy? Have him sue me? Go ahead. I'll drag every skeleton out of his closet. Every shortcut he took building his precious tech empire. You're bluffing. Am I? He pulled out his phone, showing me documents I'd never seen before. Your father wasn't as clean as you think. Want to know how many corners he cut? How many people he stepped on? My hands started shaking. Those are fake. The patent office won't think so. His smile turned cruel. Neither will his investors. One anonymous tip, and it all comes crashing down. You destroy him just to hurt me? I destroy him to protect what's mine. He stepped around the desk. Including you. I backed away, bumping into the wall. I was never yours to own. No. He moved closer. Then why did you marry me? Because you loved me? Or because your parents approved of my pedigree, my connections? Stop it. Face it, Sloane. You're just like me. Playing the game, using people. I'm nothing like you. Really? He grabbed my wrist as I tried to leave. Then why are you here alone? Why didn't you bring your lawyer? Because you thought you could manipulate me, just like your mother taught you. I yanked my arm free. Don't talk about my mother. Poor Marlowe, he continued, his voice mocking. All those years building her empire, and now she can't even speak to defend it. How long before the board pushes you out? A month? A week? Something inside me snapped. I grabbed the nearest object, a crystal award from his desk, and hurled it at the wall. The crash was satisfying, but not as satisfying as the way he jumped. You want to talk about manipulation? My voice shook with rage. Let's talk about how you and your parents planned this from the beginning. How you married me for my family's money. How you... The office door opened. Camille stood there, looking perfectly composed despite the late hour. I thought I heard voices. She glanced at the shattered crystal. Having a disagreement? Get out, I spat. I'm afraid I can't do that. She held up her phone. Not when I have such interesting security footage of you assaulting my son. My blood ran cold.
What?
You throwing things, threatening him. She clicked her tongue. Not very maternal behavior. I wonder what a judge would think about Lila's safety with such an unstable mother. The room spun. They'd planned this too. The confrontation, the security footage, everything. You wouldn't dare use my daughter against me. Try us. Reed's voice was soft, dangerous. Sign over your controlling interest in the salons, and we forget this happened. Fight us, and you'll lose everything. The business, your father's reputation, and Lila. I looked between them, mother and son, so alike in their calculated cruelty. All my careful plans, my evidence of their theft, meant nothing if they could paint me as unstable, dangerous. I'll give you 24 hours to decide, Camille said, as if offering a generous gift. Choose wisely. They left me there, surrounded by shattered crystal and broken dreams. My phone buzzed, a text from Dad about Mom's condition worsening. Another from my lawyer warning about Reed's countersuit. I slid down the wall, the divorce papers scattered around me like fallen leaves. For the first time since this nightmare began, I had no idea how to fight back. But I knew one thing. I couldn't let them win. Not just for me, but for Lila. For Mom. For everything our family had built. I just had to figure out how. The moment I walked into Reed's parents' house, I knew something was wrong. The place was too quiet, too still, like a trap waiting to be sprung. I found them in the study, Reed, Camille, and Grant, arranged like a tribunal behind the massive oak desk. The security footage from Reed's office played silently on a laptop between them. Where's Lila? I asked, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Safe, Camille replied. With the nanny. We thought it best to handle this Professionally. I set my own laptop on the desk.
Funny. I was thinking the same thing.
Reed's smirk faltered when I opened it, revealing a video chat window. Maria's face appeared, along with my father's lawyer and, most surprisingly, Grant's former business partner, Thomas. "Hello, Grant," Thomas said, his voice crackling through the speakers. "Been a while." Grant's face went pale. "What is this?" "This," I said, pulling out a USB drive, "is everything. The real records from the salon accounts. Dad's original patent documentation. And something really interesting from Thomas about some creative accounting you and Reed did at your old firm." Camille stood up sharply. "You're bluffing." "Like you were bluffing about that security footage?" I played my own recording from my phone, which had captured the entire setup at Reed's office. Amazing what modern phones can do, isn't it? Reed lunged for my laptop, but I was faster, stepping back. "Don't bother. It's all backed up. And if anything happens to me or Lila, it goes straight to the FBI." "You destroy your own family?" Reed's voice cracked. "Your daughter's future?" "No, Reed. I'm saving it. From you." "We can still work this out," Camille interjected, her perfectly manicured hands spreading in a placating gesture. "We're family." "Family?" I laughed. "Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't use a 3-year-old as leverage. Family doesn't." "Oh, spare us the moral high ground," Reed snapped. "You're just like us, using whatever advantage you can get. The difference is, I'm not doing this for money." I turned to Thomas. "Show them." Thomas shared his screen, displaying financial records that made Grant audibly gasp. "This is what they really took from your mother's business, Sloan. And this." More documents appeared. This is what they were planning to do next. The room went silent except for the hum of the laptop fans. I watched their faces as they realized just how thoroughly I'd outmaneuvered them. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, pulling out a stack of papers. "You're going to sign these, all of you. Full confession of the theft, immediate repayment of everything you took, and a legally binding agreement to stay away from my family's businesses forever. And if we refuse?" Camille's voice trembled slightly. "Then Thomas sends everything to the SEC. I'm sure they'd be very interested in Grant's creative accounting methods." "And Reed?" I met his eyes. "Those investors you scammed? They're very eager to talk to the FBI." Reed slumped in his chair, the fight draining from him. "You've been planning this all along. I learned from the best." I pushed the papers toward them. "You taught me how to play the long game, remember?" One by one they signed. Even Camille, though her hand shook with barely suppressed rage. As Thomas and the lawyer witnessed the signatures virtually, I felt no triumph, only exhaustion. "One more thing," I said, pulling out the divorce papers. "Full custody of Lila. Non-negotiable." Reed stared at the papers for a long moment. Can I still see her?" "Supervised visits. If you get help, real help, not just playing the victim." He signed without another word. As I packed up my laptop, Grant spoke for the first time. "What happens now?" I paused at the door.
Now?
"You get to experience what it's like to build something honest for once. To earn what you have." I looked at each of them in turn. "Consider it a gift. More than you gave my family." I left them there, surrounded by the ruins of their schemes, and went to collect my daughter. It wasn't the revenge I'd originally wanted, but it was something better, justice, with a chance for redemption. Mom would have approved. 6 months later, I stood in my mother's renovated office, watching the sunset paint the salon windows gold. The place hummed with the familiar sounds of hair dryers and quiet conversation, a symphony Mom had conducted for decades. "MS. Sloan." Maria appeared in the doorway. "Your 4 o'clock is here." I checked my watch, surprised. "Send him in." Reed looked different, thinner, less polished. The designer suits were gone, replaced by a simple button-down and jeans. He carried a thick folder and something else I couldn't quite see. "Thanks for meeting me," he said, hovering in the doorway like a stranger, which I supposed he now was. "Lila's excited about the zoo tomorrow," I offered, keeping things neutral. The supervised visits had been going well, better than I'd expected. He nodded, then placed the folder on my desk. I've been doing some research about small business loans, specifically for salon expansions. There's a program that could help with those 3 new locations you're planning. I stared at him. Why? Because I owe you. More than money. He shifted uncomfortably. I've been working with a financial advisor, helping other people avoid the mistakes I made. It's good work. Honest work. And your parents? Haven't spoken to them since the divorce. They're in Florida now, trying to rebuild with what's left.
He paused.
I'm not asking for forgiveness, Sloan. Just a chance to do something right for once. I opened the folder, scanning the carefully organized documents. The research was thorough, professional, exactly what the business needed. Why now? Because Lila asked me something at our last visit. He pulled out what he'd been holding, a framed photo of Mom cutting the ribbon at her first salon opening. She wanted to know if her grandmother was a superhero because of how you talk about her. My throat tightened. What did you tell her? I told her the truth. That her grandmother built something amazing, and that her mother is even stronger for protecting it.
He set the photo on my desk.
I found this in my parents' storage. Thought it belonged here instead. I picked up the photo, remembering that day. I'd been 12, watching Mom shine with pride as she built her dream from nothing. Just like I was doing now. The loan program, I said finally. Is it legitimate? Completely. I'll send all the information to your lawyer first. No strings, no involvement from me unless you want it. I studied him, this new version of Reed, humbled but somehow more real than the polished salesman I'd married. I'll think about it. He turned to leave, then stopped. You know what the hardest part was? Realizing I had everything I needed already. A family, a home, love. I just couldn't see it through my own greed. And now I see clearly. He smiled sadly. Too late, but clearly. After he left, I sat at Mom's old desk, my desk now, and looked at the photo. The setting sun caught the glass, reflecting my own face over hers. Different women, different battles, same determination. My phone buzzed with a text from Dad. Mom squeezed my hand today. Doctors say it's a good sign. I smiled, touching the frame gently. Maybe Reed wasn't the only one getting a second chance. Maria knocked softly. The staff meeting's ready. We're discussing the expansion plans. I stood, straightening my jacket. Actually, I have some new information to share about that. From Reed's proposal? Maybe. I picked up the folder. But this time, we'll do it our way. The right way. As I walked into the conference room, I caught my reflection in the salon mirrors, not just Mom's daughter anymore, but my own person. Someone who could protect what mattered while still leaving room for growth, for change, for redemption. Even for those who might not deserve it. Because that's what real strength is, not just knowing how to fight, but knowing when to build something new from the ashes of what was lost. And we were just getting started. It was one of those days that seemed to blend into the rest. The kind of day where you go through the motions, not expecting much to change. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping my lukewarm coffee and scrolling through my emails, when a subject line caught my eye. You deserve to know. I clicked on it more out of curiosity than anything else. The email was anonymous, with a cryptic message that read, "Look closely before it's too late," followed by a photo of Grant, my husband, with a woman I didn't recognize. They were at a cafe, leaning in close, sharing a moment that looked far too intimate for my comfort. My heart skipped, then raced, as if trying to catch up with the reality that was unfolding before me. My name is Mabel, and up until that moment, I believed I had a pretty good handle on my life. I'm a dental hygienist, and I like to think I'm pretty good at reading people. But this felt like a betrayal I never saw coming. I stared at the screen, my mind a whirlwind of doubt and disbelief. Grant and I had been together for over a decade, and while things weren't perfect, I never imagined this. I decided to confront him that evening. As he walked through the door, I tried to act normal, but my hands shook slightly as I handed him a glass of wine. He took it, kissed my cheek, and asked about my day. I could barely focus on the small talk, my mind fixated on the email. "Grant," I said, trying to sound casual. "I got an interesting email today." He looked up from his phone, a hint of curiosity in his eyes. "Oh, from who?" "That's the thing," I replied, watching his face closely. "It was anonymous, but it had a picture of you with someone I don't know." His reaction was immediate, a flicker of something. Was it guilt or surprise? Crossed his face before he composed himself. "Mabel, you know how these things are. Probably just some spam or a scam. You can't trust everything you see online." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But there was something in his tone, something evasive, that made my stomach twist. "And the woman in the picture?" He shrugged, too nonchalantly. "Probably someone from work. You know how it is with clients." I nodded, but inside, my doubt was growing. Grant's family was wealthy, with a legacy steeped in power and control. I'd always felt a bit like an outsider, especially around his father, Walter, who had this way of making everyone feel small. But Grant had always been my anchor in that world. Now, that anchor felt like it was slipping away. Later that night, as he slept beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. My mind was a storm of questions. Was this just a misunderstanding? Or was there something more, something dangerous, lurking beneath the surface? I thought of Hazel, our niece, who had come to live with us after her parents, Clark and Fiona, passed away. She was a bright kid, too smart for her own good sometimes, and she had already been through so much. I couldn't let her get caught up in whatever this was. I had to protect her. The next morning, I decided to dig deeper. I started with Grant's office, looking for anything that might explain the photo. It felt wrong, like I was invading his privacy, but I had to know. As I sifted through papers, I found something odd, financial documents that hinted at a secret trust fund. It was a small discovery, but it felt like the tip of an iceberg. I knew I couldn't do this alone. I needed someone I could trust, someone who could help me navigate this tangled web. My mind immediately went to Nora, my best friend and confidant. She was pragmatic and no-nonsense, the kind of person who could see through the fog of emotions and get to the heart of the matter. As I closed the door to Grant's office, I felt a chill run down my spine. Whatever this was, it was bigger than I had imagined. And I had a feeling it was just the beginning. I glanced at my phone, the anonymous email still open. There was no sender, no trail to follow. But the message was clear. Look closely before it's too late. I was already in too deep to turn back now. The truth, whatever it was, had to be uncovered. For Hazel, for myself, and maybe even for Grant. The question was, how far was I willing to go to find it? The next morning, I decided to visit Hazel at Walter and Vivian's estate. It was something I did often, but today felt different, charged with a tension I couldn't quite place. As I drove up the long, winding driveway lined with perfectly manicured hedges, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into enemy territory. The estate was as imposing as ever, a testament to Walter's success and, perhaps, his need to project power. Vivian greeted me at the door, her smile as polished as the marble floors. "Mabel, darling, how lovely to see you," she said, her eyes scanning me with the precision of a hawk. I couldn't help but wonder what she was searching for. "Hi, Vivian. Is Hazel around?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "She's in the garden," Vivian replied, her tone clipped. "She's been spending a lot of time there lately." I nodded, making my way through the house. The air was thick with unspoken words, a tension that clung to the walls like dust. As I stepped outside, I spotted Hazel sitting on a stone bench, her face buried in a book. She looked up as I approached, her expression brightening. "Aunt Mabel," she exclaimed, setting the book aside and running to me. I hugged her tightly, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on my shoulders. "Hey, kiddo. How's everything going?" I asked, pulling back to look at her. She shrugged, a shadow passing over her features. "It's okay, I guess. Grandma and Grandpa have been acting weird." I frowned, kneeling down to her level. "Weird how?" Hazel hesitated, glancing back at the house. "It's like they're always watching me, like I'm part of some plan I don't know about." Her words sent a chill down my spine. "Hazel, you know you can tell me anything, right?" She nodded, her eyes earnest. "I know. It's just, I miss Mom and Dad, and sometimes I feel like I'm just a piece in their game. I hugged her again, my heart aching for her. You're not a piece, Hazel. You're family, and I'm going to make sure you're okay. As we sat there, I couldn't shake the feeling that the Quinns were up to something. The anonymous email, the photo of Grant, the secret trust fund, they all pointed to a web of secrets I was only beginning to unravel. Later, as I was leaving, I ran into Walter in the hallway. He was a tall man, his presence commanding even in silence. "Mabel," he said, his voice smooth but with an edge that always put me on guard. "How's Hazel?" "She's doing okay," I replied, meeting his gaze. "But she misses her parents." Walter nodded, his expression inscrutable. "We all do. It's been hard on the family." I watched him carefully, searching for any sign of the man behind the mask. "I hope we can all work together to make things easier for her." "Of course," he said, a hint of something. Was it sincerity or calculation in his voice? Family is everything. As I drove home, I replayed the conversation in my mind. Walter's words seemed genuine, but there was something about his demeanor that made me uneasy. I had a feeling that whatever was happening, it was far from over. Back at home, I found myself drawn to Grant's office again. The financial documents I had discovered nagged at me, a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. As I sifted through papers, I stumbled upon something new, a list of transactions connected to a trust fund in Hazel's name. The amounts were staggering, far beyond anything I had imagined. This revelation threw everything into chaos. If Hazel was at the center of a financial scheme, it meant the stakes were higher than I thought. I needed to talk to Nora to get her take on all of this. That evening, I met Nora at a small cafe, the kind of place where you could talk without being overheard. As I laid out everything I had found, her expression shifted from concern to a steely determination. "Mabel, this is serious," she said, her voice low. "You need to be careful. If Walter and Vivian are involved, they won't take kindly to anyone interfering." I nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. "I know, but I can't just stand by and do nothing. Hazel deserves better." Nora reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "Then we'll figure this out together."
But you need to be smart about it.
"We can't let them know we're onto them." As I left the cafe, I felt a mix of fear and resolve. The Quinns were hiding something, and I was determined to uncover it. But the more I dug, the more dangerous it felt. I had to protect Hazel, and that meant taking risks I never anticipated. The question was, how far was I willing to go? And what would I find once I reached the bottom of this tangled mess? The days after my visit to the Quinn estate felt like walking on a tightrope. Every interaction with Grant was tinged with an unspoken tension, a dance around the elephant in the room. I was determined to protect Hazel, but the more I dug, the more I realized how tangled this web really was. Nora called me one afternoon with a lead. "Mabel, I think you need to hear this," she said, her voice urgent. "I was talking to a friend who used to work in finance. They mentioned something about Clark and Fiona looking into Walter's business deals before their accident." A chill ran down my spine. "You think it's connected?" "I don't know, but it seems too coincidental to ignore," Nora replied. "Be careful, Mabel. This could be bigger than we thought." Her words echoed in my mind as I went through Fiona's belongings later that evening. I had avoided it for too long, fearing what I might find. As I sifted through her papers, my fingers brushed against something cold and metallic.
A key.
My heart skipped a beat. It was a small, nondescript key, but it felt significant. I knew Fiona had secrets, but this was a tangible link to whatever she had been hiding. The key was a promise of answers, but it also felt like opening Pandora's box. The next day, I decided to talk to Grant. I needed to know where he stood in all of this. As he sat across from me at the kitchen table, I could see the weight of his family's legacy etched into his features. "Grant, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I found something in Fiona's things. A key." He looked up, surprise flickering in his eyes. "A key to what?" "I don't know yet, but I think it might be important," I replied, searching his face for any hint of recognition or guilt. Grant sighed, rubbing his temples. Mabel, you know how complicated my family is. Complicated doesn't begin to cover it, I said, frustration creeping into my voice. Hazel deserves to know the truth. We all do. He nodded, a shadow passing over his expression. I know. I don't want to lose you over this. His words hung in the air, a confession of sorts. I reached across the table, taking his hand. Then help me. Help me find out what really happened. As we sat there, I could feel the walls between us starting to crack, revealing the raw, vulnerable truth beneath. It was a small step, but it felt like progress. That evening, I decided to visit the bank and see what the key unlocked. As I stood in front of the safety deposit box, my hands trembled with anticipation and fear. I took a deep breath and turned the key. Inside, I found a stack of documents and a letter addressed to me. The documents detailed Walter's illegal real estate deals, a web of corruption that stretched far beyond what I had imagined. The letter, written in Fiona's familiar handwriting, was a plea for help, expressing her fears for her and Clark's safety. My heart pounded as I read her words, the enormity of the situation crashing down on me. Fiona had known the risks, yet she had tried to uncover the truth. And now, it was up to me to finish what she had started. I left the bank with a new sense of purpose, but also a growing fear of what might come next. As I drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat, every turn a potential danger. Back at the house, I found Hazel in the living room, her face illuminated by the glow of her laptop. She looked up as I entered, a question in her eyes. "Hey, Aunt Mabel. Everything okay?" she asked, her voice tentative. I forced a smile, trying to mask the turmoil inside. "Yeah, just a long day." As I watched her return to her screen, I knew I couldn't let her down. I had to protect her from whatever darkness the Quinn legacy harbored. But with every step closer to the truth, the danger felt more real, more immediate. The stakes were higher than ever, and I was running out of time. The Quinns had secrets they would do anything to protect, and I was caught in the middle. But I couldn't turn back now. Not when Hazel's future depended on it. The question was, how much was I willing to risk to see justice served? And would I lose everything in the process? The days that followed my discovery at the bank were a blur of anxiety and determination. I felt like I was living on borrowed time, each moment a precarious balance between uncovering the truth and keeping Hazel safe. The documents and Fiona's letter weighed heavily on me, a constant reminder of the danger lurking within the Quinn family. One evening, as I sat at the kitchen table, poring over the documents once again, Grant walked in. His face was drawn, shadows under his eyes hinting at sleepless nights. He hesitated at the doorway, as if unsure of his place in the room. "Mabel, we need to talk," he said finally, his voice tinged with a weariness that mirrored my own. I looked up, meeting his gaze. "About what?" He pulled out a chair and sat down, his hands fidgeting with a pen. "I know about the trust fund. I found out about it a while ago, but I didn't know how to tell you." His admission hit me like a punch to the gut. "You knew? And you didn't say anything?" Grant sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I thought I could handle it on my own. I didn't want to drag you into this mess." I watched him, trying to gauge his sincerity. "What else are you hiding, Grant?" He hesitated, the silence stretching between us like a chasm. "Walter's been grooming Hazel to take over someday. He wants to secure the family legacy through her." The revelation was a sucker punch. Hazel as the heir to Walter's empire? It was a future I hadn't considered, and one I wasn't sure she wanted. "Does Hazel know?" "No," Grant replied, his voice heavy with regret. "And I don't think she should. Not yet." I nodded, my mind racing with the implications. Hazel was just a child, thrust into a world of power and manipulation. I couldn't let her be used as a pawn in Walter's game. The next day, I met Nora for coffee, needing her pragmatic perspective. As I recounted Grant's confession, her expression shifted from concern to determination. "Mabel, this changes everything. You need to get Hazel out of there before Walter tightens his grip," Nora said, her voice firm. I nodded, the weight of her words settling over me. But how? Walter's influence is everywhere. Nora leaned in, her eyes sharp. We need leverage. Something that will force Walter to back off. Her suggestion lingered in my mind as I drove home. I knew I had to act, but the path forward was fraught with uncertainty. The Quinns were powerful, and I was just one person trying to protect Hazel from a legacy she never asked for. That evening, as I sat with Hazel, I watched her laugh at something on her laptop, her innocence a stark contrast to the storm brewing around her. I knew I had to shield her from the darkness threatening to engulf us both. The next morning, I received a call from an unknown number. My heart raced as I answered, half expecting another anonymous tip. But the voice on the other end was familiar. "Mabel, it's Vivian," she said, her tone clipped. "We need to talk." I agreed to meet her, curiosity and apprehension mingling in my chest. As I arrived at the estate, Vivian met me in the drawing room, her demeanor as polished as ever. "Mabel, I know you've been digging into family matters," she began, her eyes narrowing. "But you must understand, everything we do is for the family's future." I met her gaze, unflinching. "And what about Hazel's future? Does she get a say in any of this?" Vivian's expression softened, a rare vulnerability breaking through her usual facade. "I care for Hazel, truly. But Walter is set in his ways. He believes this is what's best." Her words hung in the air, a confession wrapped in justification. It was clear Vivian was caught between loyalty and love, a struggle I knew all too well. As I left the estate, I realized the power dynamics were shifting. Vivian's uncertainty was a crack in Walter's armor, a potential ally in my fight for Hazel. But the path ahead was still uncertain, and every step felt like walking through a minefield. The stakes had never been higher, and I knew I had to act fast. Walter's plans for Hazel were a threat I couldn't ignore, and the clock was ticking. But with every revelation, my resolve grew stronger. I would protect Hazel, no matter the cost. The question was, could I outmaneuver Walter before it was too late? And what would be the price of victory in a game where the rules were constantly changing? With each passing day, the pressure mounted like a storm ready to break. The documents I had uncovered were a ticking time bomb, and I knew I had to act before the Quinns found a way to silence me. Every glance over my shoulder felt like a reminder that I was being watched, and every shadow seemed to whisper of danger. One evening, as I sat in the living room, the tension between Grant and me was palpable. He paced the floor, a caged energy simmering beneath his calm exterior. I could tell he was wrestling with his own demons, caught between loyalty to his family and the need to protect Hazel. "Mabel, we need to decide what to do next," he said, finally breaking the silence. His voice was steady, but there was an urgency in his eyes. I nodded, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. "We can't let Walter get away with this, but we need to be smart about it." Grant paused, his gaze fixed on the floor. "What if we go to the authorities? Hand over the documents and let them handle it?" The suggestion hung in the air, tempting in its simplicity. But I knew it wasn't that easy. Walter's influence was far-reaching, and a misstep could put Hazel in more danger. And what if Walter finds out before we can? He'll do anything to protect himself. Grant's jaw tightened, frustration evident in the set of his shoulders. "Then what do? We can't just sit here and wait for him to make the next move." I stood up, the restlessness propelling me into action. "We need leverage. Something that will force Walter to back off." As I spoke, an idea took shape, a risky plan that could turn the tide in our favor. But it was a gamble, and the stakes were higher than ever. I glanced at Hazel, who was sprawled on the couch with her headphones on, oblivious to the storm raging around her. "We need to get Hazel out of here," I said, my voice firm with resolve. "Somewhere safe, where Walter can't reach her." Grant nodded, understanding dawning in his eyes. "I know a place. A cabin upstate. It's secluded and no one knows about it." The plan was set, but the execution was fraught with risk. We had to act quickly before Walter caught wind of our intentions. As the evening wore on, I packed a bag for Hazel, my hands shaking with the enormity of what we were about to do. The next morning, as we prepared to leave, there was a knock at the door. My heart leapt into my throat, fear and anticipation mingling in my chest. Grant opened the door to reveal Vivian, her expression a mix of concern and determination. "Mabel, Grant, we need to talk," she said, her voice urgent. "Walter's planning something. I don't know what, but you need to be careful." Her warning was unexpected, a glimmer of hope in the midst of chaos. "Vivian, we need your help," I said, seizing the opportunity. "We need to get Hazel to safety." Vivian hesitated, the conflict visible in her eyes. "I want to help, but if Walter finds out—" "We'll handle Walter," Grant interjected, his voice steady. "But Hazel needs to be away from here." Vivian nodded, a decision made. "I'll stall Walter, give you time to get away." With Vivian's help, we had a chance. But as we loaded Hazel into the car, a new fear gripped me. What if this wasn't enough? What if Walter's reach extended further than we imagined? As we drove away from the house, the gravity of our actions settled over me. We were crossing a line, stepping into a world where the rules were dictated by power and influence. But for Hazel's sake, it was a risk we had to take. The road stretched out before us, a path fraught with uncertainty and danger. But with each mile, my resolve hardened. I would do whatever it took to protect Hazel, even if it meant confronting the darkness within the Quinn family. The question was, how far would Walter go to maintain his empire? And could we outmaneuver him before it was too late? The drive upstate was tense, the silence in the car heavy with unspoken fears. Hazel sat in the back seat, headphones on, oblivious to the gravity of our escape. Grant's grip on the steering wheel was tight, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. I watched the trees blur past, each mile feeling like a small victory against the storm we were fleeing. But as we neared the cabin, a sense of unease settled over me. We were stepping into the unknown, leaving behind the safety of familiarity for a refuge that felt both promising and perilous. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that Walter's reach extended further than we imagined. When we finally arrived, the cabin stood silent and secluded, surrounded by dense woods that offered both protection and a sense of isolation. Hazel bounded out of the car, eager to explore, while Grant and I unloaded the bags, our movements synchronized by necessity rather than comfort. As night fell, the weight of our situation pressed down on me. The cabin was a temporary sanctuary, but it couldn't shield us from the reality waiting beyond its walls. The documents I had found were a ticking time bomb, and Walter wouldn't rest until he regained control. Later, as Hazel slept upstairs, Grant and I sat in the dimly lit living room, the shadows casting long, looming shapes on the walls. The silence between us was thick, filled with the tension of unresolved questions and unspoken fears. "We can't stay here forever," I said finally, my voice breaking the quiet. "Walter won't stop until he finds us." Grant nodded, his expression grim. "I know, but we need time to figure out our next move." I leaned back, exhaustion tugging at my bones. What if we don't have time? What if he's already closing in? Grant's gaze met mine, a flicker of determination in his eyes. "We'll figure it out. We have to." His words were meant to reassure, but they only highlighted the precariousness of our situation. We were outmatched, a small family against a powerful empire, and the odds felt insurmountable. The next morning, a knock at the door shattered the fragile peace we had found. My heart leapt into my throat as I opened it, half expecting to see Walter's men. Instead, it was Nora, her face drawn with urgency. "Mabel, you need to know something," she said, stepping inside. "Walter's filed a missing persons report. He's using it to track you down." The revelation hit me like a punch, the walls of our sanctuary closing in. "How long do we have?" "Not long," Nora replied, her voice laced with worry. "You need to move and fast." As we scrambled to pack, the gravity of our situation became painfully clear. Walter was closing in, and our options were dwindling. Every plan we had seemed to unravel, leaving us with nothing but desperation and a dwindling sense of hope. In the chaos, Hazel approached me, her eyes wide with confusion. "Aunt Mabel, what's happening? Why are we leaving?" I knelt down, forcing a smile. "We're going on adventure, sweetie. Somewhere safe." Her brow furrowed, skepticism in her gaze. "But why do we have to hide?" Her question pierced through my resolve, a reminder of the innocence we were trying to protect. "Because we love you, Hazel, and we want to keep you safe." As we loaded the car once more, the reality of our situation settled over me like a heavy cloak. We were running out of time, and the path forward was shrouded in uncertainty. But just as we were about to leave, the sound of an approaching car stopped us in our tracks. My heart pounded as a black sedan pulled up, the driver's door opening to reveal Walter, his expression as unyielding as ever. "Mabel, Grant," he said, his voice carrying a weight of authority. "We need to talk." His presence was a final twist, a reminder of the power he wielded and the danger we faced. As he approached, I felt the last threads of our plan unraveling, leaving us exposed and vulnerable. The confrontation was inevitable, and as Walter stood before us, I realized that our fight was far from over. We were at our lowest point, with everything to lose and no clear path to victory. The question was, how far were we willing to go to protect Hazel? And in the face of such overwhelming odds, could we find a way to turn the tide? Walter stood before us, his presence as commanding as ever, but there was an edge to his demeanor that hinted at desperation. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the clearing, and I felt the weight of the moment pressing down on me. This was it, the confrontation I had been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. "Mabel, Grant," Walter began, his voice smooth but carrying an undercurrent of steel. "I understand your concerns, but this isn't the way to handle things." Grant stepped forward, his posture tense. "And what is the way, Walter? To let you control Hazel's life, like you did with Clark and me?" Walter's eyes flickered with something akin to regret, but he quickly masked it with resolve. "I only want what's best for the family. And what about what's best for Hazel?" I interjected, my voice firm. "She deserves a future of her choosing, not one dictated by your ambitions." Walter's gaze shifted to me, his expression unreadable. "You don't understand the pressures of maintaining a legacy. The sacrifices needed." I shook my head, frustration boiling over. "Sacrifices? You mean like Fiona and Clark? How many more lives are you willing to ruin for the sake of your empire?" Walter's face hardened, but there was a flicker of vulnerability in his eyes. "I never intended for things to go this far. But once you're in, it's hard to get out." The admission hung in the air, a crack in the armor of the man who had always seemed unbreakable. But I couldn't afford to let sympathy cloud my judgment. "Not now." "Then step aside, Walter," Grant said, his voice steady. "Let us handle things. Let Hazel have the life she deserves." Walter hesitated, the weight of his past decisions visible in the lines etched on his face. "And what if I refuse?" The question was a challenge, a final test of our resolve. But before I could respond, Vivian appeared, her presence a calming counterpoint to Walter's intensity. "Walter, please," she said softly, placing a hand on his arm. "We've lost too much already. Let them go." Walter looked at her, a silent conversation passing between them. For a moment, it seemed as if he might relent, but then his gaze hardened once more. "No," he said, his voice firm. "I can't let everything I've built fall apart." The words were a catalyst, igniting the tension that had been simmering beneath the surface. But just as the situation seemed poised to spiral out of control, Hazel stepped forward, her voice cutting through the chaos with surprising clarity. "Grandpa, stop," she said, her eyes wide but determined. "I don't want to be a part of this. I just want to be a kid." Her words were simple but powerful, a reminder of what truly mattered. Walter's expression faltered, and for the first time, I saw the man behind the facade, a grandfather torn between ambition and love. The moment stretched, the air thick with anticipation. But then, unexpectedly, Walter sighed, the fight leaving him. "All right," he said quietly, the word carrying the weight of a lifetime of regrets. All right. The tension in the air dissipated, replaced by a fragile sense of relief. Walter's decision was a turning point, a step toward healing the rift that had torn our family apart. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the clearing in twilight, I felt a sense of closure settling over me. The battle was over, and though the path ahead was uncertain, it was one we would navigate together. The confrontation had brought us face to face with the core themes of our journey: revenge, justice, and the power of family. In the end, it was love and understanding that had prevailed, offering a glimmer of hope for the future. As we turned to leave, Walter called out, his voice carrying a note of vulnerability I had never heard before. "Mabel, Grant, thank you." His gratitude was unexpected, a testament to the change that had begun to take root. And as we walked away, I knew that though the road ahead would be challenging, we were no longer alone. Together, we would forge a new path, one defined not by the shadows of the past, but by the promise of a brighter future. The days following the confrontation with Walter were a whirlwind of change and reflection. The cabin, once a temporary refuge, now felt like the beginning of a new chapter. As we settled back into our lives, I could sense the shift in the air, a lightness that had been absent for too long. Walter kept his word, stepping down and transferring control of the family assets to Grant. It was a decision that surprised many, but it was a testament to the impact of our confrontation. The empire Walter had built was now in the hands of someone determined to use it for good. One afternoon, as the sun cast a warm glow over the garden, I found Hazel sitting under a tree, her laptop balanced on her knees. She looked up as I approached, a smile lighting up her face. "Aunt Mabel, look," she exclaimed, pointing to the screen. "I'm designing a website for a school project." Her enthusiasm was infectious, and I couldn't help but smile back. "That's amazing, Hazel. You're really talented." She shrugged, a hint of pride in her eyes. "I want to do something that helps people, like you and Uncle Grant." Her words touched something deep within me, a reminder of why we had fought so hard. Hazel's future was hers to shape, free from the shadows of the past. Later, as Grant and I sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, the silence between us was comfortable, filled with the unspoken understanding of what we had overcome. "You did it," Grant said softly, his gaze on the horizon. "You protected Hazel and changed everything." I shook my head, a smile playing on my lips. "We did it. Together." He reached for my hand, his touch grounding me in the moment. "I've been thinking about what comes next, how we can make things right." His words were a promise, a commitment to the path we had chosen. The legacy Walter had left was complex, but it was also an opportunity to build something new, something better. As the days turned into weeks, we worked to secure Hazel's trust fund, ensuring her future was safe and independent. Walter's decision to step back had set a ripple effect in motion, one that allowed us to redefine what family meant. Vivian, too, found her place in this new world. She visited often, her presence a reminder of the strength that lay in unity. The past couldn't be changed, but it could be learned from, and she was determined to be a part of Hazel's life in a way that mattered. One evening, as I sorted through the last of Fiona's belongings, I came across a letter I hadn't noticed before. It was addressed to me, written in Fiona's familiar script. "Mabel, if you're reading this, it means you've uncovered the truth," it began. "I always believed in the power of family to heal and transform. Protect Hazel, and remember that love is stronger than any legacy." Her words were a balm to my soul, a reminder of the journey we had taken and the strength we had found in each other. As I sat there, the letter in my hands, I realized that our story was one of redemption and transformation. We had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, guided by love and the promise of a brighter future. But even as we moved forward, a lingering question remained: what would we do with the power now in our hands? The answer lay not in the past, but in the choices we made each day, in the commitment to use our influence for good. In the end, The journey had been about more than just justice or revenge. It was about finding our way back to each other, about forging a path defined by love and resilience. As the sun set on our new life, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, united by the bonds we had fought so hard to protect. And as Hazel joined us on the porch, her laughter ringing out into the evening, I knew that we had found something precious, a family bound not by secrets or power, but by the simple, enduring truth of love.
I never thought I'd feel jealous watching someone else's mom make dinner, but there I was, frozen in Tessa's kitchen doorway, watching Mrs. Monroe teach her daughter how to properly dice an onion. The way she guided Tessa's hands, laughing at her daughter's exaggerated tears from the fumes, it hit me like a punch to the gut. My name's Lila, and I've spent 18 years pretending I was fine with how things were in my family. But something about that simple moment between Tessa and her mom cracked something open inside me that I couldn't close again. "You're holding the knife too flat, honey," Mrs. Monroe said, adjusting Tessa's grip. "There you go. Now you won't slice your fingers off." She kissed the top of Tessa's head, and I had to look away. "Earth to Lila," Tessa called out. "You gonna help us with this curry or just stand there looking tragic?" I forced a smile and stepped into their warm, chaotic kitchen. Counter was covered in half-chopped vegetables, and something aromatic simmered on the stove. It was so different from my house, where takeout containers and pristine and used appliances ruled the kitchen. "Sorry, just zoned out for a second," I said, grabbing a knife. "What do you need me to do?" Mrs. Monroe handed me a pile of bell peppers. "These need to be julienne, that means thin strips, sweetie. And tell me how that college application process is going. Your mother mentioned you were looking at state?" I focused on the pepper, carefully removing the seeds. "Actually, I'm thinking about taking a gap year. Maybe work for a while, figure things out." I waited for the lecture about wasting potential, the one my parents had already given me twice this week. Instead, Mrs. Monroe just nodded. "That's perfectly reasonable. Sometimes we need time to find our path." She squeezed my shoulder as she passed, and I nearly cut myself from the unexpected gesture. My phone buzzed, probably my mother reminding me about dinner. I'd been avoiding going home lately, making excuses to stay at Tessa's or the library. Anything to dodge another silent meal where the only sounds were forks scraping plates and my father's occasional comments about his dental practice. "Stay for dinner?" Tessa asked, reading my mind as usual. "Mom always makes too much anyway." Before I could answer, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from my father. "Family meeting tonight. Mandatory. 7 p.m. sharp." "Can't," I said, showing Tessa the text. "Apparently, we're having a family meeting." "Ooh, sounds serious," Tessa waggled her eyebrows. "Maybe they're finally getting you that pony you asked for when you were 7. I forced a laugh, but something felt off. My parents didn't do family meetings. They did carefully scheduled appointments and efficiently managed conversations, usually about my academic performance or career trajectory. "I should head out," I said, washing my hands. "Thanks for letting me help with dinner, Mrs. Monroe." "Anytime, sweetheart. You're always welcome here." She gave me a quick hug and I had to blink back sudden tears. The walk home felt longer than usual. Our house stood dark and imposing against the evening sky, every window dark except for my father's study. Through the glass, I could see him on the phone, pacing with that focused expression he got when closing a deal or planning an investment. My mother's car wasn't in the driveway yet, but her text had confirmed she'd be home for the meeting. Whatever this was about, it was big enough to disrupt her usual late nights at the office. I stood at the bottom of our perfect stone walkway, looking up at our perfect house with its perfect landscaping, and felt something shift inside me. Whatever was coming, whatever this meeting was about, I had a feeling it would change everything. Taking a deep breath, I started up the path, the smell of Tessa's family's curry still clinging to my clothes. A reminder of everything I didn't have waiting for me behind that heavy front door. The family meeting turned out to be more of an execution, just with expensive wine instead of a last meal. My parents sat across from me at our formal dining table, their faces wearing the same expression they used when firing household staff. "We're moving to Switzerland," my father announced, swirling his wine like this was a casual dinner conversation. "I've accepted a position with an international dental consortium. Your mother will be heading their PR department." I waited for the rest, the part about my college plans, about where I'd be living. The silence stretched until I realized they weren't going to say it. I had to ask, "When do we leave?" My mother's perfectly manicured fingers tapped against her wine glass. "We leave in 3 weeks. You, however, will not be joining us." The words hit like ice water. "What?" "You're 18 now, Lila," my father said, his tone practical. "Old enough to start building your own life. We've arranged for your trust fund to become accessible, and there's enough there for a modest apartment and living expenses while you attend university." I stared at my mother, searching for any hint of emotion. She met my gaze with the same detached interest she showed during charity galas. "This is an opportunity for you to develop independence," she said. "We've provided everything you need to succeed. Everything except parents who gave a damn. When were you planning to tell me? Or was this meeting my notice to vacate?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Don't be dramatic," my father sighed. "We're giving you 3 weeks to make arrangements. That's more than generous." I pushed back from the table, my chair scraping against the hardwood. "Right. Generous. Like abandoning your kid is some kind of gift." "We're not abandoning you," my mother's voice sharpened. "We're treating you like the adult you are. Many young people would be grateful for this level of financial support." I laughed, the sound harsh in our too-perfect dining room. "Yeah, I'm sure lots of kids dream of being bought off so their parents can start a new life without them." Moving toward the stairs, I heard my father call out, "Where are you going?" "We haven't finished discussing the arrangements." "I'm going to pack," I shot back. "Wouldn't want to waste any of your generous 3-week notice." In my room, I grabbed my laptop and started searching for apartments, my vision blurring. A notification popped up, an email from my mother, already forwarding contact information for realtors and financial advisors. Of course. They'd probably had this planned for months. My phone buzzed with a text from Tessa. "How was the family meeting? Everything okay?" Before I could respond, I noticed an envelope that had fallen from my mother's home office while I was storming upstairs. The address caught my eye. It was to my Aunt Marge, my mother's estranged sister who we never discussed. The letter was unsealed. I knew I shouldn't read it, but at this point, what more could they do to me? The contents made my hands shake. "Marjorie, I know you'll never forgive me for what happened with David. I live with that choice every day. But now that Graham and I are leaving, I need you to watch over Lila. She has too much of him in her, that same softness that made David so vulnerable. I can't protect her from that anymore." Who was David? And what choice was my mother living with? A knock at my door made me shove the letter under my pillow. My father stood there, holding a folder. "These are the documents you'll need," he said, placing them on my desk. "The realtor can show you properties starting tomorrow." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something I'd never noticed before. Fear. But of what? "Dad," I started, but he was already turning away. "Get some rest, Lila. You have a lot to arrange in the next few weeks." I sat on my bed, the mysterious letter burning under my pillow, my phone buzzing with Tessa's concerned messages, and realized I had 2 choices. I could do what I'd always done, follow their plans, be the perfect daughter even in abandonment, or I could finally start asking the questions they never wanted me to ask. Starting with finding out who David was and what my mother had done to him. The Moonlight Cafe wasn't my first choice for a job. But beggars can't be choosers when they're racing against a 3-week deadline to build an independent life. Leo Hargrove, the owner, hired me on the spot, his smile a little too warm as he showed me around the kitchen. "Such a shame about your parents," he said, demonstrating how to work the espresso machine. "I knew your mother back in high school. She was different then. The way he said different made me look up sharply, but his expression gave nothing away. Everyone in this town seemed to have secrets about my family except me. Different how? I asked, trying to sound casual while steaming milk. Leo shrugged, but his eyes held mine a moment too long. People change. Sometimes for good reasons. He glanced at the clock. Take your break. We should talk about your situation. In his office, Leo leaned back in his chair, studying me. You know, I have an apartment above the cafe. Previous manager lived there. It's sitting empty now. My heart jumped. The real estate agent had shown me nothing but overpriced dumps all week. Really? Could be yours. Reduced rent for an employee, of course. He smiled that too warm smile again. We'd need to work out some arrangements. Something in his tone made my skin crawl. What kind of arrangements? Nothing unreasonable. Extra shifts, helping with books, keeping me company during late nights. He reached across the desk, his fingers brushing my hand. I could be very generous to the right person. I jerked back, nearly knocking over my chair. I should get back to work. Don't be hasty, Lila. You're in a tough spot. I'm offering help. His voice hardened slightly. Your mother would understand. She made similar choices when she was young. The implications hit me like a slap. What exactly do you know about my mother? Enough to know the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. He stood, moving around the desk. Think about it. The offer stands. For now. I backed toward the door. I quit. You're just like him, Leo called after me as I fled. David never could see an opportunity when it was right in front of him either. I froze. David? But Leo just smiled and turned away, leaving me with another piece of the puzzle I couldn't quite fit. Sighed, I slumped against the building, hands shaking as I pulled out my phone and the crumpled letter from my pocket. 2 mentions of David in 2 days after 18 years of never hearing the name. I googled David Caldwell plus our town name. The first result made my blood run cold. Local teen's disappearance remains unsolved after 20 years. The grainy photo showed a boy around my age, with a familiar smile that hit me like a punch to the gut. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother. The realtor said you haven't chosen an apartment yet. Time is running out. Another buzz. Stay away from Leo Hargrove. I stared at the second message, anger and confusion burning in my throat. Now she wanted to protect me? After arranging to abandon me in the same town where her nephew had vanished? My fingers moved before I could think better of it, typing in Aunt Marge's address from the letter. It was only a 20-minute drive. Going to be late, I texted my parents. Don't wait up. The response came instantly. Do not contact Marjorie. This isn't up for discussion. But I was done with their discussions, done with their secrets and schemes. If they wouldn't tell me the truth about David, about why they were really leaving town, about what Leo knew, then I'd find someone who would. I got in my car and pulled up directions to Aunt Marge's house, the newspaper article about David still open on my phone. Whatever had happened 20 years ago, whatever choice my mother had made, it was all connected to why they were abandoning me now. And I was going to find out exactly what they were running from. Aunt Marge's house looked exactly like the kind of place someone with secrets would live, all overgrown hedges and peeling paint, with wind chimes that rattled like old bones in the evening breeze. I sat in my car for 10 minutes before working up the courage to knock. The door opened before my knuckles could touch it. I wondered when you'd show up. Aunt Marge looked nothing like my mother, where Celeste was all polished edges. Marge was soft curves and faded flannel. You have his eyes. David's. The name slipped out before I could stop it. Something flickered across her face. Come in before the neighbors start talking. God knows they've done enough of that over the years. The inside was cluttered but clean, with mismatched furniture and walls covered in photographs. I stopped at one showing my mother as a teenager, her arm around a smiling boy who could only be David. "That was 2 weeks before," Marge said quietly. "Before everything changed. What happened to him?" She moved to the kitchen, putting on a kettle. "Your mother never told you?" "My mother never tells me anything." I followed her, watching as she pulled out 2 chipped mugs. "But Leo Hargrove seems to know all about it." The mug slipped from Marge's hands, shattering on the linoleum. "You've spoken to Leo?" "He offered me a job. And an apartment. And other things." Marge's face went pale. "You stayed away from him?" "I quit." "But he said something about my mother making similar choices when she was young." "That bastard," Marge whispered, her hand shaking as she cleaned up the broken ceramic. "After all these years, he's still—" My phone buzzed, another text from my mother. "Come home immediately. We know where you are." "They're going to try to stop me from finding out the truth, aren't they?" I showed Marge the message. She straightened up, something hardening in her expression. "Your mother's been running from the truth for 20 years. But maybe it's time someone finally told it." Before she could continue, headlights swept across the windows. Car door slammed. "Marjorie!" My mother's voice, sharp as broken glass. "Open this door." Marge grabbed my arm. "Back door." "Go to the garage. There's a box on the top shelf marked David's things. Take it. Read everything. Then you'll understand why they're leaving and why they want you gone too." "Marge, please." "Go. I'll hold them off." "But Lila." Her eyes met mine. "Whatever you read, remember, your mother wasn't the only one who made choices that night. We all did. Even David." I slipped out just as the front door burst open. Through the kitchen window, I saw my parents enter, my father looking uncomfortable, my mother radiating cold fury. "Where is she?" Celeste demanded. "Hello, sister. 20 years since you've crossed my threshold, and that's how you greet me." I crept into the garage, finding the box exactly where Marge said it would be. Inside was a stack of newspapers, letters, and a leather-bound journal. The first headline made my blood freeze. "Local teen missing after confrontation at Moonlight Cafe." Beneath it was a photo of Leo Hargrove, 20 years younger, being questioned by police. And there, in the background, barely visible, my mother, being led away in tears. A noise from the house made me jump. I shoved everything back in the box and slipped out the side door, just as I heard my mother's voice rise. "You have no right to tell her anything about that night. She has every right to know why her cousin disappeared," Marge shot back. "And why you've been protecting his killer all these years." I nearly dropped the box. Killer? My mother had protected David's killer? As if sensing my thoughts, my phone lit up with one final message from my mother. "Whatever you think you know, you don't understand. Come home now or there will be consequences." But standing there in the dark, clutching a box full of 20-year-old secrets, I realized I was done letting them threaten me with consequences. It was time they faced some of their own. I spent the night in Tessa's garage, surrounded by David's box of secrets. The newspapers painted a familiar story. Teenage boy vanishes after late-night argument at local cafe. But David's journal told a different tale, one that made my hands shake as I read. "Leo knows about Mom and Uncle Jack," the last entry read. "Says he'll tell everyone if I don't keep quiet. But Celeste says she has a plan." My mother had a plan. And hours later, David disappeared. Dawn was breaking when Tessa found me, still reading. "Your mom's been calling everyone," she said, sitting beside me. "She even called my parents at midnight. Did you know about any of this?" I showed her the newspaper clipping about David. "Mom and Dad never talk about it. But sometimes when your mom comes up in conversation, they get this look." She trailed off, reading over my shoulder. "Wait, Uncle Jack? As in your dad's brother. The one who died in that car accident the year before I was born." I pulled out another letter, this one from David to my mother. Except according to this, he didn't die in an accident. He killed himself after Leo threatened to expose their affair. My phone buzzed. Aunt Marge, your mother's looking for you. Be careful. Leo's helping her search. Why would she team up with Leo? Tessa asked. If he's the one who... Because they're both protecting something bigger than David's disappearance. I held up the journal. The last few entries, David was investigating money moving through the cafe. Large deposits, always after Uncle Jack's dental practice made withdrawals. Money laundering? Through Dad's practice too after Uncle Jack died. David figured it out, threatened to expose everything. I closed the journal, feeling sick. No wonder they're running to Switzerland. And leaving me behind as a distraction. Tessa grabbed my arm. Lila, look. Through the garage window, we could see Leo's car crawling past, scanning the street. My phone lit up again. My mother. Whatever David told you in those journals, he was confused. Come home. We can explain everything. How does she know about the journals? Tessa whispered. Because Aunt Marge must have told her what she gave me. I started shoving everything back in the box. Which means... A knock at the garage door made us both jump. Lila. Aunt Marge's voice. I know you're in there. Please, we need to talk. I opened the door cautiously. Marge looked exhausted, her eyes red. I had to tell them what I gave you. They have leverage. You mean they threatened you? I said flatly. Like they threatened David? It's complicated. What happened that night? Was my mother involved in David's disappearance? Marge flinched. She was trying to protect him. We all were. But Leo, he had other plans. And now you're all protecting Leo? After what he did. We're protecting you. Marge's voice cracked. Why do you think your mother's leaving you behind? As long as you're here, safe and ignorant, Leo won't. Car door slammed outside. My mother's voice carried through the garage. Marjorie? Is she in there? Marge grabbed my shoulders. Whatever you do, don't confront Leo. He's been watching you since you turned 18. Just like he watched David. Why? What does he want? The same thing he wanted then, someone young and desperate enough to be controlled. To keep the operation running while your parents established the European connection. Another car pulled up. Leo's distinctive engine. Marge pressed something into my hand, a key. Storage Unit 23, Cross Creek Facility. Everything David collected is there. The proof he never got to show the police. She pushed me toward the back door. Run. And Lila? I'm sorry. For all of it. As I slipped out into the morning light, I heard Leo's voice. Found her car around the corner. She can't have gone far. They were wrong about one thing. I wasn't running from the truth anymore. I was running toward it, straight to the evidence that would bring down everyone who'd had a hand in destroying David's life. And maybe, finally, give him the justice he deserved. The storage unit door groaned open, revealing stacks of boxes and a musty darkness that made my skin crawl. I'd barely switched on my phone's flashlight when I heard footsteps behind me. I knew you'd come here. My mother's voice, tired and hollow. Just like David did. I spun around. She stood in the doorway, looking smaller somehow, her perfect posture crumbling at the edges. How did you? Marge texted me. She's trying to protect you, even if you can't see it. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. We all were. By covering up his murder? Murder. She laughed, a broken sound. Is that what you think happened? The journal entries, the money laundering, Leo's threats. Leo didn't kill David. She moved to a stack of boxes, running her fingers along one marked evidence. David killed himself. Right here in this storage unit. After I convinced him to help us trap Leo. The flashlight beam trembled. What? We thought we were so clever. David would pretend to join Leo's operation, gather evidence, wear a wire. Her voice cracked. But Leo knew. He always knew. He showed David photos of me, of Jack, of all the evidence he had against our family. Said if David went to the police, we'd all go down. So David just gave up. He left a note, saying he couldn't live with either choice, destroying his family or letting Leo win. She pulled something from her pocket, a folded piece of paper, worn at the creases. I found him here. Too late. I grabbed the note, my hands shaking as I read David's last words. I'm sorry, Aunt Celeste. I tried to be strong enough. Take care of Mom. That's why you're so cold, I whispered. Why you never. I got your cousin killed by trying to fix things. By thinking I could outsmart someone like Leo. She met my eyes. When I saw you getting closer to him at the cafe, watching him draw you in like he did David. A metallic click cut her off. The storage unit door. Quite the family reunion. Leo's voice made my blood freeze. Though you forgot to invite me. He stood in the doorway, backlit by the hallway fluorescence. Something glinted in his hand. You're not taking her too, my mother stepped between us. Actually, Celeste, I think it's time Lila learned the whole truth. About David, about Jack. He smiled. About what really happened to all that money. Mom, my voice sounded small, even to me. What's he talking about? Tell her, Celeste. Tell her who really suggested using David as bait. Who knew he was unstable, knew he might crack under pressure. That's not, my mother started. Tell her who kept the operation running after David died. Who used her own guilt to build our little empire. He stepped closer. Tell her why you're really running to Switzerland. My mother's shoulders sagged. I had to protect what was left of my family. By working with him. The betrayal burned in my throat. After what he did to David, I did what I had to do. And now, she turned to Leo. Now we're done. The evidence, the accounts, everything David collected, it's all here. Take it. Leave Lila out of this. Leo's laugh echoed off the metal walls. Oh, Felicite. You still think you're in control? He raised the gun. But we both know how this ends. Just like it did with David. The storage unit plunged into darkness as my flashlight died. A shot rang out. Someone screamed, maybe me. When the emergency lights flickered on, my mother lay crumpled against the boxes, red spreading across her designer blouse. Leo was gone, along with the box marked evidence. Mom! I pressed my hands against the wound, feeling her blood seep through my fingers. Stay with me. Please. Her eyes focused on something behind me. Run, she whispered. Footsteps approached. Like mother, like daughter, Leo's voice came from the doorway. Always trying to fix things that should stay broken. I turned, seeing the gun aimed at my head, and realized with startling clarity that I finally understood how David felt in his final moments. Sometimes there are no good choices left. The fluorescent lights flickered as Leo's finger tightened on the trigger. My mother's blood was still warm on my hands, and somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. You won't shoot me, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. You need me. Leo's smile didn't reach his eyes. And why's that? Because I'm the only one who knows about the second set of books. The words tumbled out before I could second-guess them. The ones David actually hid. His gun hand wavered slightly. Behind me, I heard my mother's labored breathing. You're bluffing, Leo said, but uncertainty crept into his voice. David never had time to tell you about them? Course not. You scared him into suicide before he could. I stood slowly, positioning myself between Leo and my mother. But he told someone else. Someone you never suspected. A door slammed somewhere in the storage facility. Leo's head jerked toward the sound. You really think David would trust his aunt? I pressed. The sister of the woman having an affair with his uncle? No. He trusted someone his own age. Someone who could wait years to use the information. Tessa, Leo breathed. That's why you two were always at the cafe. I forced a laugh. All those years, watching you, learning your operation. Did you really think I applied for that job by accident? The sirens were closer now. Leo's face twisted with rage and doubt. You're lying, he snarled, but his eyes darted to the door again. Maybe. But can you risk it? Police are coming. If those books surface. I took a step forward. How many people did you really kill, Leo? David wasn't the first, was he? Shut up. The gun shook in his hand. Or was it all just manipulation? Making people think death was their only escape? Another step. Like you tried with me? I said shut. The storage unit door burst open. Aunt Marge stood there, holding something that made Leo's face go white. Looking for this? She held up a USB drive. David gave it to me the night he died. Said if anything happened to him, I should keep it safe until Lila was old enough. That's impossible, Leo whispered. You weren't even in town that night? Marge's laugh was bitter. I was. Celeste called me worried about David. I got here too late to save him, but not too late to find what he left behind. Leo swung the gun toward Marge. I lunged, grabbing his arm. The shot went wide, sparking off metal walls. We grappled for the weapon as Marge shouted something I couldn't hear over the blood pounding in my ears. His finger found the trigger again. I twisted, remembering a self-defense move Tessa's dad had taught us years ago. The gun went off. Leo staggered back, a look of surprise crossing his face as red bloomed across his chest. He fell, the gun clattering away. Lila, my mother's voice, weak but urgent. The box. Under the tarps. I scrambled to where she pointed. Under dusty tarps lay a metal box, its lid covered in familiar handwriting David's. He knew, my mother whispered as I opened it. Knew what would happen. Left everything we'd need. Inside were files, photos, USB drives, 2 decades of evidence against not just Leo but everyone involved in his operation. And on top, a letter addressed to me. Dear Lila, it began. If you're reading this, it means you're facing the same choice I did. But you're stronger than I was. You'll make the right decision. The storage unit filled with police and paramedics. As they loaded my mother onto a stretcher, she grabbed my hand. I'm sorry, she said. For everything. For not being strong enough to end this years ago. I squeezed her hand, watching Leo's still form being covered with a sheet. It's ended now. Aunt Marge wrapped an arm around me as the paramedics wheeled my mother away. David would be proud, she said softly. You finished what he started. I looked down at the letter in my hands, thinking of choices and consequences, of strength and weakness, of the thin line between justice and revenge. No, I said. We all did. 6 months later, I stood in front of the renovated Moonlight Cafe, now transformed into a community center. The grand opening banner fluttered in the spring breeze, and Aunt Marge squeezed my hand as we watched families stream inside. David would have loved this, she said softly. My mother approached slowly, still walking with a slight limp. Her designer clothes were gone, replaced by simple jeans and a sweater. The art therapy program starts next week, she said. We already have 10 teens signed up. The irony wasn't lost on any of us, turning Leo's hub of manipulation into a safe haven for vulnerable youth. Sometimes the best revenge is healing what your enemy tried to destroy. Dad called again, I told them, watching their reactions carefully. Wants to me explain his side of things. What are you going to do? My mother asked, her voice careful, neutral. I pulled an envelope from my bag, the last piece of David's legacy found buried in one of his boxes. I think I'll send him this instead. Inside was a photo of my father with Leo, dated years before I was born, both men smiling over signed documents. On the back, David had written, "The beginning of everything." Remember who chose this path. Are you sure? Marge asked. Some doors are hard to close once they're opened. Some doors shouldn't stay closed, I replied, thinking of all the secrets that had poisoned our family. Besides, he deserves to know why I'm choosing to stay here. My mother flinched slightly at that, but didn't argue. We'd spent months rebuilding our relationship, learning to talk without hiding behind perfect facades and practiced lies. It wasn't always pretty, but it was real. Tessa emerged from the center, grinning. You guys have to see this. The kids are already filling up the suggestion box. Someone even asked if we could start a creative writing program. For processing trauma through storytelling, my mother mused. That's actually brilliant. Speaking of storytelling, Marge pulled something from her purse, a worn journal with David's name on the cover. I think it's time for this to have a new home. I stared at it. But that's the journal that started everything? Yes. She pressed it into my hands. But look at the blank pages in the back. They're waiting for a new story. Your story. As if on cue, a group of teenagers walked past, laughing and pushing each other playfully. They reminded me of David's photo, of how young and full of hope he'd been before everything went wrong. Maybe some stories don't need endings, I said, running my fingers over the journal's worn cover. Maybe they just need new beginnings. My mother touched my shoulder, a gesture that once would have felt foreign but now carried the weight of everything we'd survived together. New beginnings require letting go of old endings. I nodded, thinking of the letter I'd written to my father, still unsent. I forgive you, but I don't need you. I found my family in the truth, not in comfortable lies. Inside the center, someone started playing piano halting, beautiful notes floating through the open doors. Life finding its way through the cracks of what was broken. Ready, Tessa called from the entrance. The writing workshop's about to start. I looked at these women, my aunt who kept faith, my friend who kept secrets, my mother who kept trying, and felt something settle in my chest. Not peace exactly, but purpose. Actually, I said, I think I'm ready to tell my own story. As we walked inside together, I caught a glimpse of our reflection in the window, 4 women, all carrying different pieces of the same broken history but moving forward anyway. Behind us, David's journal waited in my bag, its blank pages promising something I'd never understood until now. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about making others pay for the past. Sometimes it's about refusing to let that past define your future. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you find the family you need in the aftermath of losing the one you thought you wanted.
I was in the middle of organizing a high-profile art exhibit, juggling a million tasks at once, when my phone buzzed insistently in my pocket. I glanced at the screen, saw Ethan's name, and picked up immediately. His voice was urgent, almost frantic, and it sent a shiver down my spine. Riley, we need to talk. Can you come over tonight? My family wants to have dinner. Now, let me back up a bit. My name's Riley. I'm an event planner at a prestigious art gallery, and I love what I do. It's chaotic but thrilling, like trying to tame a whirlwind. My life was pretty much a balancing act between my career and my relationship with Ethan, my fiancé. He's an environmental scientist, a bit introverted but genuinely supportive. We've been together for a while, and things were going well, or so I thought. The moment I walked into Ethan's family home, I felt the tension. It was almost tangible, like walking through a thick fog. Lorraine, Ethan's mother, greeted me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Riley, dear, nice to see you, she said, her voice dripping with a sweetness that felt more like syrup than honey. Vanessa, Ethan's sister, was already at the table, her eyes scanning me like I was some kind of puzzle she was trying to solve. Riley, she said, nodding slightly. Her tone was polite, but there was an edge to it, a subtle challenge that made my skin prickle. Dinner started off with the usual small talk, but I could feel the undercurrents. Lorraine asked questions about my work, her interest too pointed to be genuine curiosity. So, Riley, how do you manage such a demanding job and still find time for Ethan? She asked, her eyes fixed on me. I smiled, trying to keep my tone light. It's all about balance, I guess. Ethan's really supportive, and that helps a lot. Vanessa chimed in, her voice smooth but with a hint of something darker. It must be hard, though. I mean, with all the late nights and events, it must take a toll on your relationship. I felt a flicker of irritation but kept my composure. We make it work. We always find time for each other. Ethan, sitting beside me, reached for my hand under the table, giving it a reassuring squeeze. But his silence was unnerving. He seemed distant, preoccupied, and it made me uneasy. As dinner went on, the conversation shifted, but the tension didn't. Vanessa's comments were laced with subtle digs, and Lorraine's questions felt more like interrogations. I could sense their skepticism, their doubt about me, and it stung. After dinner, as I was helping clear the table, Vanessa approached me in the kitchen. "You know, Riley," she said, her voice low, "Ethan's always been the type to trust too easily. I just hope you're as committed to him as he is to you." The insinuation was clear, and it hit me like a punch to the gut. I forced a smile, refusing to let her see how much her words affected me. "I love Ethan," I said simply, meeting her gaze. Her eyes narrowed slightly, and for a moment I saw something flicker there, fear, maybe, or insecurity. But then it was gone, replaced by that cool, calculating look. On the drive home, Ethan was quiet, lost in thought. I wanted to ask him what was going on, why his family seemed so hostile, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I focused on the road, my mind racing with questions. As we pulled up to our apartment, Ethan finally spoke. "I'm sorry about tonight, Riley. I didn't expect it to be so tense." I sighed, leaning back in my seat. "It's okay. I just wish I knew what was really going on." He hesitated, and I could see the conflict in his eyes. "There's something I need to tell you, but not tonight. Can we talk tomorrow?" His words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken truths. I nodded, trying to ignore the knot of anxiety tightening in my chest. As I lay in bed that night, staring up at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Something was brewing beneath the surface, something that could change everything. And I had a sinking feeling that Vanessa was at the center of it all. The next morning, Ethan and I sat across from each other at our small kitchen table, the sunlight streaming through the window, casting long shadows. I could see the worry etched on his face, and it mirrored the unease in my own heart. We needed to talk about last night, about the engagement announcement that was supposed to be a celebration but turned into a battlefield. "Ethan," I began, trying to keep my voice steady, "about your family, I just don't understand why they reacted that way." He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I know. It's just complicated. Vanessa's always been protective, and my mom, well, she's set in her ways." I reached for his hand, needing the connection. "I want to get along with them, Ethan, but it's like everything I do is wrong in their eyes." He squeezed my hand, his eyes softening. "We'll figure it out, Riley. I promise." I nodded, trying to believe him, but the doubt lingered. As I got ready for work, I couldn't shake the feeling that Vanessa was more than just protective. There was something else driving her hostility, something deeper. At the gallery, I threw myself into my work, organizing the upcoming exhibit. The familiar chaos helped distract me, but my mind kept drifting back to Ethan's family. I needed to talk to someone who wasn't caught up in the middle of it all, someone who could give me perspective. During lunch, I called Mia, my best friend and confidant. We met at a small cafe near the gallery, and as soon as I saw her, I felt a wave of relief. Mia had a way of cutting through the noise and getting to the heart of things. "So," she said, taking a sip of her coffee, "what's going on with Ethan's family?" I told her everything, from the engagement dinner to Vanessa's passive-aggressive comments. Mia listened, her expression shifting from curious to concerned. "Riley," she said, leaning forward, "it sounds like Vanessa's got some serious control issues. Maybe she's afraid of losing her brother to you." I nodded, grateful for her insight. "But why? I mean, I'm not trying to take him away. I just want to be a part of his life." Mia shrugged. "People like Vanessa, they thrive on control. Maybe she's scared that if Ethan marries you, she won't have the same influence over him." Her words made sense, but they also added another layer of complexity to an already tangled situation. I thanked Mia for her advice, feeling a little more grounded as I headed back to work. That evening, as Ethan and I were preparing dinner, my phone buzzed with a message from Vanessa. It was a list of wedding venues, all of which were far from what Ethan and I had discussed. It was a subtle but clear attempt to steer the wedding plans in her direction. "Look at this," I said, handing my phone to Ethan. "She's trying to take over our wedding." He frowned, scrolling through the list. "I'll talk to her, Riley. She needs to back off." I watched him, wondering if he would really stand up to his sister. I wanted to believe he would, but the doubt lingered. The next few days were a blur of work and wedding planning, with Vanessa's interference becoming more pronounced. She questioned every decision, sowing seeds of doubt in Ethan's mind. I could see the strain it was putting on him, and it hurt to watch him caught in the middle. Then, one evening, as we were going over the guest list, Ethan hesitated. "Riley, do you think we should reconsider the venue? Vanessa made some good points about the one we chose." I felt a flash of frustration. "Ethan, we picked that venue because it means something to us, not because it fits Vanessa's idea of a perfect wedding." He looked torn, and I could see the conflict in his eyes. "I know, but maybe she's right. Maybe we should think about it." His words stung, and I realized how deeply Vanessa's influence ran. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Ethan, this is our wedding. We should make the decisions, not Vanessa." He nodded, but the doubt lingered, and I knew this was far from over. As I lay in bed that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that things were spiraling out of control. Vanessa was driving a wedge between us, and I didn't know how to stop it. But I was determined to find a way, even if it meant confronting Vanessa head-on. The stakes were too high to back down now. The gallery was buzzing with activity when I stumbled upon the first hint of Vanessa's betrayal. I was flipping through emails on my phone, trying to juggle the latest exhibit details, when a message caught my eye. It was from an unknown sender with a subject line that simply read, "FYI." Curiosity piqued, I opened it, only to find a screenshot of a social media post. It was Vanessa in some private group making snide comments about me and my dedication to my job. She implied that my late nights were more about secret rendezvous than art exhibits. The words were like a punch to the gut, each one a sharp reminder of her disdain. My hands shook as I scrolled through the messages, my mind racing. How could she stoop so low? The thought of her spreading such lies made my blood boil. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions swirling inside me. This was a new level of betrayal, and I needed to handle it carefully. That evening, I confronted Ethan. We were in the living room, the warm glow of the lamp casting soft shadows. I handed him my phone, letting him read Vanessa's words for himself. His face fell, a mix of disbelief and anger flickering in his eyes. "Riley, I had no idea," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I can't believe she would do this." I nodded, my heart heavy. "I don't know what to do, Ethan. She's trying to ruin my reputation, and it's not just about us anymore. It's my career." He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. "I'll talk to her. This has to stop." But his words, though well-meaning, felt hollow. I needed more than promises. I needed action. And as much as I wanted to believe he could fix this, I knew it was up to me to protect myself. The next day, I met Mia for lunch again, needing her perspective. Her eyes widened as I showed her the messages. "Riley, this is serious. You can't let her get away with this." I nodded, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on me. "I know, but what can I do? I can't just confront her without proof." Mia leaned back, thoughtful. "You need to find out why she's doing this. There has to be a reason, something she's hiding." Her words struck a chord, and I realized she was right. Vanessa's actions were driven by more than just jealousy or control. There was something deeper, something I needed to uncover. That evening, as I was leaving the gallery, I received another anonymous message. This one was different, though. It hinted at Vanessa's own secrets, suggesting that her life wasn't as perfect as she portrayed. My curiosity piqued, I decided to dig deeper. Over the next few days, I started piecing together the puzzle. I reached out to a few contacts, discreetly asking questions and gathering information. It was risky, but I needed to know the truth. Then, just as I was beginning to lose hope, I received a tip that changed everything. Vanessa had been involved in a scandal at her law firm, something that had been quietly swept under the rug. It was a revelation that added a new layer to her actions, hinting at vulnerability and hypocrisy. Armed with this new information, I felt a surge of determination. Vanessa's facade was starting to crack, and I was ready to expose it. But I knew I had to be careful. This was a delicate dance, and one wrong move could ruin everything. That night, I sat down with Ethan, ready to share what I had discovered. "Ethan, there's something you need to know about Vanessa," I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. He listened intently as I laid out the evidence, his expression shifting from shock to anger. "I can't believe she would go this far," he said, his voice tight with emotion. I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. "I need to confront her, Ethan. This can't go on." He took my hand, his grip firm. "I'm with you, Riley. Whatever you need, I'm here." His support meant everything, but I knew this was a battle I had to face head-on. Vanessa's web of lies was unraveling, and it was time to bring the truth to light. As I lay in bed that night, I felt a sense of clarity. The path ahead was fraught with challenges, but I was ready to face them. Justice was within reach, and I was determined to see it through. The air in our apartment felt thick with unspoken words as Ethan and I prepared dinner. I could sense the tension between us, a silent acknowledgement of the storm brewing just outside our walls. Vanessa's manipulations had pushed us to the edge, and I knew we were teetering on a precipice. "Ethan," I said, breaking the uneasy silence, "we need to talk about the wedding. About everything." He paused, setting down the knife he was using to chop vegetables. "I know, Riley. It's just, there's so much pressure from my family." I nodded, trying to keep my voice calm. "I understand, but we can't let them dictate our lives. This is about us, not them." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You're right. I just wish things were simpler." As we sat down to eat, I noticed a missed call from an unknown number on my phone. Curiosity piqued. I excused myself and stepped into the hallway to return the call. "Hello," I said, my voice echoing slightly in the narrow space. "Riley Thompson?" A man's voice replied. "This is Mark, the private investigator you contacted." My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't expected to hear from him so soon. "Yes, that's me. Do you have any news?" "I do," he said, his tone serious. "I've found something you might want to see. It involves Vanessa Walker." I arranged to meet him the next day, my mind racing with possibilities. As I returned to the table, Ethan gave me a questioning look. "Who was that?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. "Just someone from work." I lied, not wanting to worry him until I had more information. The following day, I met Mark at a small cafe on the outskirts of town. He was a no-nonsense type, straight to the point. As we sat down, he handed me a folder, his expression unreadable. "What's this?" I asked, opening it with a mix of anticipation and dread. "Evidence," he replied simply. "Vanessa's been involved in some questionable activities. I thought you'd want to know." Inside the folder were documents and photographs, each one more damning than the last. Vanessa had been using her position at the law firm to manipulate clients, bending the rules to her advantage. It was a tangled web of deceit, and it explained so much about her need for control. I felt a mix of vindication and sadness as I absorbed the information. Vanessa's actions had been driven by fear, a desperate attempt to maintain her facade. But this was more than just a personal vendetta. It was a professional scandal waiting to explode. As I left the cafe, my mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. I had the evidence I needed to confront Vanessa, but the implications were enormous. This wasn't just about clearing my name anymore. It was about exposing the truth and protecting those who might be hurt by her actions. Back home, I found Ethan in the living room, his expression tense. "Riley, we need to talk," he said, his voice strained. I nodded, bracing myself for whatever was coming. "What's on your mind?" He hesitated, searching for the right words. "My mom called. She wants us to postpone the wedding. She thinks we need more time." The request felt like a slap in the face, a stark reminder of the uphill battle we were fighting. "And what do you think?" I asked, trying to keep the hurt out of my voice. He looked torn, his loyalty divided. "I don't know, Riley. I love you, but this is tearing us apart." His words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken fears. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on me. "Ethan, I found something out about Vanessa. Something big." His eyes widened, a mix of surprise and apprehension. "What do you mean?" I handed him the folder, watching as he flipped through the contents. His expression shifted from shock to anger, and I could see the realization dawning on him. "This changes everything," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, feeling a surge of determination. "We can't let her control us anymore, Ethan. We need to stand up to her." He met my gaze, a newfound resolve in his eyes. "You're right. We can't let her win." As we sat together, the weight of the situation settled over us. The path ahead was fraught with challenges, but for the first time, I felt a glimmer of hope. We were stronger together, and with the truth on our side, we could face whatever came next. The tension in the air was palpable as Ethan and I drove to his parents' house for yet another family gathering. This time, though, the stakes were much higher. I had the evidence of Vanessa's deceit tucked securely in my bag, and my heart pounded with a mix of anticipation and dread. Today could change everything. As we pulled into the driveway, Ethan reached for my hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" he asked, his voice tinged with concern. I nodded, steeling myself for what lay ahead. "I have to be. This can't go on." Inside, Lorraine greeted us with her usual formal warmth, but I could sense an underlying tension. Vanessa was already there, sitting with Greg and chatting as if nothing was amiss. Her smile was bright, but her eyes darted toward me with a hint of suspicion. We settled into the living room, the atmosphere thick with unspoken words. I could feel my pulse quicken as I glanced around, my mind racing with everything I needed to say. Ethan cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention. "Mom, Dad, there's something we need to discuss." Vanessa's eyes narrowed slightly, and I could see the wheels turning in her mind. "What is it?" she asked, her tone deceptively casual. I took a deep breath, reaching into my bag and pulling out the folder. "I found something out about you, Vanessa. Something that explains a lot." Her smile faltered, replaced by a mask of feigned innocence. "I have no idea what you're talking about." I opened the folder, laying the documents out on the coffee table for everyone to see. "These are records of your dealings at the law firm. You've been manipulating clients, Vanessa, using your position for personal gain." The room fell silent, the weight of the accusation hanging in the air. Vanessa's face went pale, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. Lorraine gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Vanessa, is this true?" Vanessa's composure cracked, anger flaring in her gaze. "This is ridiculous. Riley, you're just trying to turn my family against me." Ethan stood by my side, his expression resolute. "Vanessa, we need the truth. This isn't just about us anymore." Greg looked between us, confusion etched on his face. "Vanessa, what is this?" She hesitated, her facade crumbling. "I did what I had to do. You don't understand the pressure I'm under." The room erupted into chaos, voices overlapping as everyone tried to make sense of the situation. I watched Vanessa, her desperation evident as she scrambled to regain control. Lorraine's voice cut through the noise, firm and authoritative. "Enough! Vanessa, you need to explain yourself." Vanessa's eyes darted around the room, searching for an ally, but finding none. "I was protecting our family, keeping everything together." Her words hung in the air, a weak justification that did little to quell the rising tension. I felt a pang of sympathy for her, but I couldn't let that deter me from what needed to be done. Ethan turned to me, his expression conflicted. "Riley, what do we do now?" I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on me. "We can't let this continue. Vanessa needs to face the consequences of her actions." Vanessa's eyes blazed with anger, but there was a hint of resignation there too. "You think you're so righteous, Riley, but you don't know what it's like to be me." Her words struck a chord, and I realized that beneath her manipulations lay a deep-seated fear of losing control. But that didn't excuse what she'd done. As the conversation continued, I felt a shift within me. This wasn't just about revenge or justice anymore. It was about doing what was right, even if it meant facing uncomfortable truths. The gathering ended with Vanessa storming out, her world unraveling around her. Lorraine looked shaken, Greg bewildered by the revelations. Ethan and I stayed behind, helping to pick up the pieces. As we left, I felt a sense of clarity. The path ahead was uncertain, but I knew I was ready to face it. I had learned that true justice wasn't about retribution. It was about standing up for what was right, even when it was difficult. Ethan squeezed my hand as we drove home, a silent promise that we would face whatever came next together. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. The drive back from Ethan's parents' house was silent, the weight of the confrontation pressing down on us like a heavy fog. I stared out the window, watching the world blur past, my mind replaying the chaotic scene over and over. Despite the evidence laid bare, the fallout was more devastating than I had anticipated. When we got home, Ethan sank onto the couch, his face etched with exhaustion. "I can't believe it came to this," he murmured, rubbing his temples. I nodded, feeling a similar weariness seep into my bones. I thought exposing the truth would make things better, but now it feels like everything's falling apart. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a mix of sadness and determination. "We did the right thing, Riley. Vanessa's lies couldn't go on forever." But even as he said it, I could sense the doubt creeping in. The confrontation had left us both shaken, and the path forward seemed more uncertain than ever. The next morning, I received a call from Lorraine. Her voice was strained, the usual authoritative edge softened by something else, vulnerability perhaps. "Riley, can we talk?" "Just the two of us." I agreed, curious and a little apprehensive. We met at a quiet cafe, the kind of place where secrets could be shared without fear of being overheard. Lorraine looked tired, her usual poise replaced by a weariness that mirrored my own. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, her voice low. "I know things have been difficult." I nodded, unsure of what to say. "They have. But I believe the truth needed to come out." She sighed, a deep, resigned sound. "Vanessa's always been complicated. I tried to protect her, to shield her from the consequences of her actions. But maybe that was a mistake. Her admission caught me off guard, a glimpse into the dynamics that had shaped their family. "It's not easy to see someone you love make mistakes," I said softly. Lorraine nodded, her eyes distant. "I just wanted to keep the family together. But now I'm not sure if that's even possible." The conversation left me with more questions than answers, a sense of unease settling over me as I headed back to the gallery. The situation felt more tangled than ever, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were teetering on the edge of something even more precarious. As I immersed myself in work, trying to find solace in the familiar chaos of event planning, my phone buzzed with a message from Mia. "Call me ASAP," it read, the urgency unmistakable. I stepped outside, dialing her number with a sense of foreboding. "Mia, what's going on?" Her voice was tense, a sharp contrast to her usual calm demeanor. "Riley, I just got a tip. Vanessa's not done. She's planning to take legal action against you for defamation." The words hit me like a punch to the gut, the breath leaving my lungs in a rush. "What? She can't be serious." "Riley, she's desperate. She's trying to salvage what's left of her reputation, and she's willing to drag you down with her." The ground seemed to shift beneath me, the precarious balance I'd been clinging to threatening to crumble entirely. "I don't know what to do, Mia. This could ruin everything. Stay strong, Riley. You have the truth on your side. But be careful. She's playing dirty." As I hung up, a wave of despair washed over me. Vanessa's vendetta had reached a new level, and the stakes had never been higher. I felt the weight of it pressing down on me, the path forward obscured by uncertainty and fear. That evening, Ethan and I sat in the dim light of our living room, the silence between us heavy with unspoken fears. I could see the worry etched on his face, a mirror of my own inner turmoil. "We're in this together, Riley," he said, his voice steady despite the tension. "No matter what happens." I nodded, grateful for his support even as doubt gnawed at the edges of my resolve. The situation felt hopeless, the odds stacked against us in a way I hadn't anticipated. But as I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, I realized something important. My fight wasn't just about clearing my name or exposing Vanessa's lies. It was about protecting the life Ethan and I were building, standing up for what was right even when the odds seemed insurmountable. The journey ahead was fraught with challenges, but I knew I couldn't back down now. I had come too far, and the truth was worth fighting for, no matter the cost. The tension in the room was electric as we gathered at Lorraine's house for what felt like the final showdown. Vanessa was there, her demeanor icy and composed, a stark contrast to the chaos swirling around us. Lorraine stood by the window, her face a mask of worry. Greg was absent, a telling sign of the fractures Vanessa's actions had caused. Ethan and I exchanged a glance, drawing strength from each other as we prepared to face the storm. The air was thick with anticipation, each of us aware that this confrontation would change everything. Vanessa broke the silence first, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "I suppose you're here to gloat, Riley. You think you've won." I shook my head, keeping my voice steady. "This isn't about winning, Vanessa. It's about the truth." She smirked, her eyes cold and calculating. "Truth? You think exposing my personal life is some kind of moral victory?" Ethan stepped forward, his voice firm. "Vanessa, this isn't just about you. Your actions have hurt everyone around you." Her eyes flicked to him, a flash of vulnerability breaking through her facade. "I did what I had to do. You don't understand the pressure I'm under." Lorraine turned from the window, her voice soft but resolute. "Vanessa, we've all made mistakes. But this has gone too far." The room fell silent, the weight of Lorraine's words settling over us. Vanessa's composure wavered, her hands clenching into fists at her sides. "You think I wanted this? To be exposed like some criminal?" I took a deep breath, stepping forward. "Vanessa, we didn't want it to come to this either. But your actions left us no choice." Her gaze met mine, a storm of emotions swirling in her eyes, anger, fear, and something else I couldn't quite place. "And what about you, Riley? You're no saint. You think you can just waltz into this family and turn everyone against me?" I held her gaze, refusing to back down. "I never wanted to turn anyone against you. But I couldn't stand by and let you destroy everything Ethan and I have worked for." Vanessa's facade cracked, her voice rising with desperation. "You have no idea what it's like to feel everything slipping away, to lose control." The words hung in the air, a raw admission that cut through the tension. It was a glimpse into the fear that had driven her actions, a fear I could understand, even if I couldn't condone it. Lorraine stepped forward, her expression softening. "Vanessa, we can help you. But you need to let us in." Vanessa's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I saw the vulnerability beneath her tough exterior. But just as quickly, she blinked them away, her walls snapping back into place. "I don't need your help," she snapped, her voice laced with defiance. Ethan reached for my hand, his grip a steadying presence. "Vanessa, please. We want to move forward, but we can't do that if you're still trying to tear us apart." For a moment, I thought she might relent, but then her expression hardened. "Do what you want, but don't expect me to just roll over and play nice." The tension in the room was palpable, each of us caught in a web of conflicting emotions. I felt a pang of sadness for Vanessa, but I knew we couldn't let her continue down this path. As the confrontation reached its peak, an unexpected voice broke the silence. It was Greg, standing in the doorway, his expression one of quiet determination. "Vanessa, we need to talk." Her eyes widened, a flicker of panic crossing her face. "Greg, this isn't the time." He shook his head, his voice calm but firm. "It is. We need to figure this out, for us and for the family." The room fell silent, the weight of his words hanging in the air. Vanessa's bravado faltered, and for the first time, I saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes. As Greg led Vanessa out of the room, I felt a sense of resolution settle over me. The path ahead was still uncertain, but we had faced the storm and come out stronger for it. Ethan squeezed my hand, a silent promise that we would face whatever came next together. And as we left Lorraine's house, I felt a newfound sense of peace. The fight for justice had tested us in ways I hadn't anticipated, but it had also shown me the power of resilience and the importance of standing up for what was right. The weeks following the confrontation were a whirlwind of change and reflection. Ethan and I decided to step back from the chaos, focusing on rebuilding our lives away from the drama that had consumed us for so long. It was a decision that felt both liberating and daunting, but one we knew was necessary for our future. We found a small cottage on the outskirts of town, a peaceful retreat where we could finally breathe and plan for the life we wanted to build together. The days were filled with quiet moments, walks in the nearby woods, and the simple joy of each other's company. It was a stark contrast to the turmoil we'd endured, a chance to rediscover the love that had brought us together in the first place. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, Ethan turned to me, his expression thoughtful. "Do you ever think about what might have happened if we hadn't stood up to Vanessa?" I considered his question, the weight of it settling over me. "I think we would have lost ourselves trying to please everyone else," I replied, my voice steady. "But standing up for the truth, for us, was the right thing to do." He nodded, a soft smile playing on his lips. "I'm proud of us, Riley. We faced so much, but we came out stronger." As we sat there, I felt a deep sense of peace settle over me. The journey had been fraught with challenges, but it had also taught me the importance of resilience and the power of standing up for what was right. A few days later, we received a letter from Lorraine. It was a simple note, but her words carried a weight of sincerity and reflection. She apologized for the pain her family had caused and expressed a desire to mend the rift, to start anew. Ethan and I read the letter together, our emotions a mix of relief and hope. It was a step toward healing, a chance to rebuild relationships that had been strained by the past. As the days turned into weeks, we found ourselves settling into a new rhythm. I returned to the gallery, pouring my creativity into new exhibits and finding joy in the work I loved. Ethan continued his research, his passion for the environment rekindled by the peace we had found. One afternoon, as I was organizing a new exhibit, Mia stopped by, her presence a welcome reminder of the support that had carried me through the darkest times. "How's life in the countryside treating you?" she asked, her eyes twinkling with curiosity. I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. "It's exactly what we needed. A fresh start." She nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I'm glad, Riley. You deserve this happiness." As we chatted, I felt a sense of closure settling over me. The journey had been difficult, but it had also been transformative. I had learned to stand up for myself, to fight for the truth, and to cherish the love that had withstood the storm. But even as we moved forward, there was a lingering question in my mind, a curiosity about Vanessa's future. She had faced the consequences of her actions, but I couldn't help but wonder if she would find her own path to redemption. One evening, as Ethan and I sat by the fire, I voiced my thoughts. "Do you think Vanessa will be okay?" He considered my question, his gaze thoughtful. "I hope so. Everyone deserves a chance to change, to find their way back." His words resonated with me, a reminder of the complexity of human nature and the potential for growth and forgiveness. It was a subtle twist in our resolution, a lingering question that added depth to our journey. As the fire crackled softly, I felt a sense of completion. Our story had been one of struggle and triumph, of love and justice. And though some questions remained, I knew we had found our own peace. A peace built on truth, resilience, and the unwavering belief in the power of love. With Ethan by my side, I looked toward the future with hope, ready to embrace whatever came next. Our journey had taught us to stand strong, to cherish the bonds that truly mattered, and to find beauty in the imperfect, unpredictable path of life.